I am Simone Vance, 34 years old, and my world ended 36 hours ago. My husband Marcus died of a sudden catastrophic aneurysm. This morning, the morning after his funeral, I walked into our $3 million home in Buckhead, Atlanta, expecting silence. Instead, I found strangers carrying out our furniture. My father-in-law, Jeremiah Vance, was directing them. He didn't offer condolences. He just smirked and said, "This property reverts to blood family now. Pack your bags." I watched them carry out the lamp Marcus and I bought on our honeymoon. I watched them handle his memory like trash. Then I calmly pulled out my phone. I didn't call 911. I called my lawyer. I told her, "Aaliyah, he's here. It's time." He forgot one crucial thing. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you. My name is Simone Vance. I'm 34 years old. 36 hours ago, I was standing right here in this bathroom, adjusting the knot on my husband Marcus's black silk tie. He hated ties, but he was giving a keynote speech at the Atlanta Business Forum. He kissed me, grabbed his briefcase, and said, "Wish me luck, love. I'll see you at dinner." He never made it to that speech. 30 hours ago, I was sitting in a sterile white room at Emory Hospital, listening to a doctor explain the catastrophic, unsurvivable nature of a sudden brain aneurysm. 12 hours ago, I stood at Westview Cemetery, watching the rain mix with my tears as they lowered his beautiful cherrywood casket into the cold Georgia clay. I was a widow. Now it's 6 a.m., the morning after the funeral. Our home, my home. This $3 million house in Buckhead that Marcus and I designed together. It's always been our sanctuary. But this morning it's quiet. It's too quiet. The silence is a physical weight pressing down on me. The hum of the sub-zero fridge sounds like a roar. The click of my own heels on the oak flooring echoes like gunshots. Marcus is gone. My best friend. My partner for 12 years. He's gone. I'm clutching our wedding photo, the one from the lawn at Spelman College, trying to remember how to just breathe. That's when I hear it. It's not a small noise. It's a heavy scraping sound from the living room downstairs. My heart stops. My first thought, blurred by grief, is burglars. They must know I'm alone. They must know the house is in mourning. I creep out of the master bedroom, my hands shaking. I look down from the landing of the curved staircase. It's not burglars. It's worse. Two men in blue jumpsuits are struggling to pivot Marcus's favorite Eames lounge chair toward the front door. They are being directed by my father-in-law, Jeremiah Vance. He's 65, immaculate in a bespoke suit, looking more like he's heading to a board meeting than overseeing a home invasion. "What are you doing?" My voice cracks. The moving men freeze. They look up at me, then at Jeremiah. Jeremiah doesn't even flinch. He just glances up, his eyes cold. "Ah, Simone, I see you're finally awake. We have a lot of work to do." Work. I grip the railing, the polished wood suddenly the only thing holding me upright. "What is this? Who are these men?" "They're movers," he says as if stating the obvious. "We're clearing the house." Clearing the house. I repeat the words, making no sense. I walk down the stairs, one agonizing step at a time, my grief momentarily eclipsed by a terrifying confusion. "Jeremiah, the funeral was yesterday. I don't understand." He sighs, a sound of profound impatience. "I'll make it simple then." He walks over to me, stopping just inches away, forcing me to look up at him. He has always been a large man, imposing. Marcus got his height, but none of his cruelty. I stare at the men, then at Jeremiah. "Get them out," I say, my voice trembling. "Get them out of my house." Jeremiah actually laughs. A short bark-like sound that echoes in the marble foyer. "Your house," he repeats, savoring the words. "Oh no, Simone. You misunderstand." He takes a step closer and I can smell his expensive cologne, a scent I've always associated with judgment and disapproval. "This," he says, gesturing to the grand staircase, the vaulted ceilings, the home we built, "was my son's house." He pauses, letting the finality of that word was settle in the air. Now that Marcus is gone, this property reverts to blood family. And you, he looks me up and down, his gaze lingering on my grief-worn robe, are not blood. His voice drops, but it carries across the room sharp and clear. Pack your bags. You don't belong here anymore. Blood family. There it is. The phrase he has used as a weapon against me for 5 years. I am not blood. I am just Simone from Decatur, the girl from a middle-class 2-bedroom house who somehow miraculously snagged his golden boy. I am not part of the Vance legacy, the old money Atlanta line he is so proud of. I am the outsider, the add-on, the temporary wife. I still remember the first dinner I had with them, Marcus holding my hand so tightly under the table. Jeremiah had asked me what my father did. I told him he was a postman. Jeremiah just nodded slowly and said, "Ah, a civil servant," as if it were a disease. He always saw me as beneath them, and now with Marcus gone, he wasn't even pretending anymore. "Jeremiah, you can't be serious," I whisper. "The funeral was yesterday. My husband, your son, is barely in the ground. And today is a new day," a new voice chimes in. My brother-in-law Dante steps out from the dining room wiping his hands on a napkin. He's 38 with Marcus's height, but none of his warmth. He's always been weak following Jeremiah's lead in everything. And right behind him, Megan, Dante's wife. She glides into the room, her blonde hair perfect even at this ungodly hour. She is the wife they always wanted for Marcus. White from a good family in Savannah and perfectly venomously polite, she completely ignores me walking past as if I'm just another piece of furniture to be removed. She stops at the console table by the stairs. Her manicured fingers adorned with a massive diamond lift the ceramic vase Marcus and I bought on our honeymoon in Morocco. "Oh, Dante, darling," she says, her voice a sweet southern drawl. "Look at this. It's lovely. It will look perfect in our living room." She picks it up and tucks it under her arm. The audacity of it steals my breath. "Megan," I say, my voice rising, "put that down. That's mine." She finally looks at me, her head tilting with a look of mock pity. "Oh, Simone, honey, I think you misheard Jeremiah. Nothing here is yours anymore. We're moving in this weekend. Dante needs this house. He has a family to raise after all." She pats her perfectly flat stomach, a subtle, cruel reminder that Marcus and I had been trying for a baby for 2 years without success. Dante just grins, wrapping an arm around his wife's waist. "She's right, Simone. This house needs a real family, a future. Not, you know." He gestures vaguely at me. "A widow." They are K-buzzards. They haven't just waited for him to die. They've been planning this. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This is a coordinated attack. They see my grief not as something to console, but as a weakness to exploit. "This is ridiculous," I say, finding a sliver of strength. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," Jeremiah scoffs. "Call them. Tell them that the executor of the Vance estate is securing the estate's primary asset. They'll probably end up arresting you for trespassing." Executor. The word hits me. "You're the executor." "Of course I am," he says. "Marcus was my son. Who else would it be?" "You." He laughs again. "Now I'm going to be generous. I'll give you 1 hour to pack a single suitcase. The movers will take the rest of your personal items and put them in storage. We'll send you the bill." He turns to the movers who have been standing awkwardly by the door. "Continue, starting with the art in the hallway." I couldn't fight all of them. Not Jeremiah, not Dante, not Megan, but Brenda. I stumbled away from the living room, away from the movers, and my laughing, thieving in-laws, and ran toward the kitchen. Brenda. Marcus's mother. She would stop this. She had to. I burst through the swinging door into the massive sun-filled kitchen, and I froze. While my world was being torn apart in the next room, Brenda Vance, my 64-year-old mother-in-law, was sitting at the breakfast nook. She was perfectly dressed, wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater. The morning sun illuminated the steam rising from her antique porcelain teacup. She was calmly reading the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as if it were just another Tuesday. "Brenda," I gasped, my voice breaking. "You have to stop them, please." She looked up slowly, her eyes devoid of any emotion. She deliberately folded her newspaper, placing it neatly on the granite countertop. "Stop what, Simone?" she asked, her voice smooth as silk. "Jeremiah? Dante? They're moving my things out. They're kicking me out of my home." I gripped the back of a chair, my knuckles white. "Brenda, please. Marcus is... He's only been gone a day. You're his mother. How can you let this happen?" She took a long, slow sip of her tea. She didn't look at me. She looked out the window at her perfect rose garden. "Jeremiah is the head of this family, Simone," she said, her voice chillingly neutral. "He knows what's best." "The best for who?" "This is my home." "It was your home," she corrected me gently. "And now it needs to be Dante's home. He has a wife, he has a family, he needs the stability." The betrayal was so profound it left me breathless. This was the woman I had cared for after her hip replacement surgery 6 months ago. The woman Marcus had quietly paid off the medical bills for when her own insurance lapsed. The woman who had cried on my shoulder at our wedding, saying she was so happy Marcus had finally found someone who understood him. And now she just sat there, sipping her tea. "So that's it," I whispered. "5 years of my life with your son. It just ends like this." Brenda finally turned to look at me. Her eyes were cold, assessing. "Marcus is gone, dear," she said, as if explaining something to a simple child. "The family must look to the future, to the bloodline." She stood up, taking her teacup to the sink. "You should probably call a taxi. Don't make this any more difficult than it needs to be." I stumbled back into the living room, my legs feeling like lead. Brenda's betrayal was the final stone pulling me under. The room was even more chaotic than when I had left. The movers were now aggressively rolling up the antique Persian rug, the one Marcus and I had spent an entire weekend haggling for at the Scots Antique Market. It felt like they were rolling up my life, my memories. Megan was directing them, her hands on her hips, her blonde ponytail swinging. She looked like she was born for this, a general commanding an army of plunderers. She finally noticed me standing there, defeated and numb by the entryway. "Oh, Simone, honey, you're still here?" she asked, her voice dripping with that fake, sugary Southern sympathy. "I honestly thought you'd be well gone by now. You're sort of in the way, dear." I didn't respond. I just stared at the empty space where our sofa used to be. My gaze drifted to the custom-made console table crafted from reclaimed heart pine. Megan followed my look and sighed dramatically. "Don't worry," she continued, walking over to it. "We'll take excellent care of everything." She ran a perfectly manicured hand, her massive diamond glinting over the wood. "Honestly, it's for the best. This house, it just screams for a proper woman's touch, don't you think? Someone with, classic taste." Her eyes scanned the room, dismissing everything. "All this rustic stuff you and Marcus picked out, it's so heavy." Rustic. The word hung in the air, a deliberate, calculated insult. Rustic. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. This room, this very living room, the one with the heavy, rustic stuff. This room won the Atlanta Interior Design Award last year. Atlanta magazine did a 6-page spread on it. Marcus was so proud he had the article professionally framed. It was hanging in our office, an office they probably hadn't looted yet. My rustic taste was celebrated in design journals across the Southeast. Megan's taste, which I had the misfortune of seeing in her and Dante's sterile condo, was a sea of beige carpets and mass-produced mirrored furniture. She had the design sense of a chain hotel lobby, but in her world, white and new meant classic, black and curated meant rustic. "What's the matter, Simone?" Dante walked up, wrapping his arm around his wife's waist. He was grinning, enjoying this far too much. Megan's just pointing out the facts. We're going to upgrade this place, bring it into the 21st century. Get out of my house. I whispered the words barely audible even to me. My house, you mean? Dante corrected me, his grin widening. Or Dad's house, but definitely not your house. Not anymore. He stepped toward me and my body tensed instinctively. He laughed a short, ugly sound. He reached out and before I could react, he patted my cheek. Not a hit, but worse. A patronizing, condescending pat. His soft, uncalloused hand brushed my skin and I felt violated all over again. You heard, Dad, he said, his voice low and cruel. Bloodline. And you, my dear, are not blood. I recoiled from his touch, a fire finally starting to build beneath the ice of my grief. Face it, he said, stepping back to admire his new domain. You had a good run, 5 years of living like a queen, but the party's over. Time to pack your little bags and go back to your apartment in Decatur. He and Megan laughed together at the reference. Decatur, the neighborhood I grew up in, the place they saw as nothing more than the ghetto. Just as Dante and Megan's laughter filled the room, Jeremiah strode back in from the porch. His face was a mask of pure impatience and his eyes were fixed on me. She's still here, he boomed, looking past me to Dante as if I were an object, not a person. I thought I told you to handle this. I'm handling it, Dad, Dante said, his voice losing some of its confidence. Clearly not fast enough, Jeremiah snapped. He turned his cold, dismissive eyes on me. The power in the room consolidated around him. He was the patriarch, the one who gave orders, the one who had never been told no. You have 1 hour, he said, his voice low and final. I'm being generous. 1 hour to pack a single suitcase, not your art, not the furniture, a single suitcase of your clothes. I just stared at him, my mind numb, my body frozen. Are you hard of hearing? He shouted, taking a menacing step toward me. The grieving widow act is over. The funeral is done. The show is over. I have already called an Uber for you, a black sedan. It is waiting at the main gate right now. The security guards know to expect you. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a low, satisfied growl. Pack your bags, Simone, and get out of my house. This was it. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. I could feel their collective gaze on me, heavy and expectant. They were waiting for the tears. They were waiting for me to fall to my knees, to plead, to beg them to stop, to appeal to their memory of Marcus, to the love they should have had for their son and brother. They wanted to see me broken. Brenda was watching from the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed her face, a blank mask of betrayal. Dante and Megan were grinning, poised like spectators at a Roman arena waiting for the final blow. They wanted a show. They wanted to see the little girl from Decatur finally shatter. And in that moment, something inside me, something deep beneath the ocean of grief, finally snapped. It wasn't a loud crack. It wasn't a surge of hot, screaming anger. It was a quiet, cold click, like a heavy steel door slamming shut deep inside my chest. The tears that were threatening to fall instantly dried up. The shaking in my hands stopped. My grief was still there, a massive black hole that threatened to swallow me whole, but orbiting around it now was a white-hot, silent rage. My spine, which had been bent in sorrow for 36 hours, straightened. I slowly lifted my head. I didn't look at Dante or Megan. I didn't look at Brenda. I looked directly into the cold, triumphant eyes of Jeremiah Vance. I even allowed myself a small, cold smile. A smile that didn't touch my eyes. You're right, Jeremiah, I said. My voice was perfectly calm. It didn't tremble. It didn't crack. It was clear and it was cold. The sound of it surprised me as much as it surprised them. The grins on their faces faltered. This wasn't the reaction they wanted. This wasn't in their script. You are absolutely right, I repeated, letting the words settle in the suddenly tense air. Property should always belong to its legal owner. I turned my back on them. I walked calmly across the marble floor to the antique telephone on the console table, the one Megan had just been admiring. I picked up the heavy, cool receiver. "What are you doing?" Dante asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. "Calling your Uber driver to tell him to wait." I ignored him. I pressed the button for the building's internal security line. Our neighborhood Buckhead has a private 24/7 security patrol. Marcus insisted on it. The line picked up on the first ring. "Buckhead Security, this is Operator 3. How can I help you?" My voice was clear and steady. "Hello. This is Simone Vance at 1450 West Paces Ferry Road. I need assistance immediately. I have intruders in my home who are refusing to leave." I gave the operator a brief description of Jeremiah, Dante, and the two movers. "We are dispatching a unit immediately, Mrs. Vance," the operator replied, all business. "They will be there in 3 minutes." I placed the receiver back in its cradle with a definitive click. For a full 10 seconds there was dead silence. Then the laughter started. It wasn't a small laugh. It was a full-blown, gut-busting roar. Jeremiah was the loudest, holding onto the wall as he doubled over, his face turning red. Dante was clutching his stomach. Even Megan, after a moment of stunned confusion, let out a high-pitched, shrieking laugh. "Intruders!" Jeremiah bellowed, wiping a tear from his eye. "Oh, that's rich. That is truly rich." "Who are you calling security on, Simone?" Dante gasped, trying to catch his breath. "Us. We're the intruders." Jeremiah stepped toward me again, his laughter subsiding into a low, dangerous growl. His good humor was gone. "You foolish, foolish girl. Call them. I want them to get here. I want to see the look on their faces and on your face when the owner of this house, Jeremiah Vance, has them personally escort you to the curb. They'll probably arrest you for making a false report," Megan added, her eyes sparkling with malice. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stood there by the phone watching them. "I agree," I said quietly. They stopped laughing. The sudden shift in my demeanor, my refusal to be intimidated, had finally unnerved them. "I too," I said, letting my words fall into the new tense silence, "am very interested to see what they say." I held Jeremiah's gaze for another second, then turned my back on him. The move was deliberate, a dismissal. I walked slowly, my heels clicking with purpose on the hardwood floor, past the spot where our sofa should have been, past the movers who were now frozen watching the drama unfold. I walked directly to the grand fireplace, the centerpiece of the room. Above it hung a massive oil-painted portrait. It was of Jeremiah and Brenda, commissioned 5 years ago. It was a terrible painting, stiff and joyless, making them look like monarchs. Marcus and I hated it. They had gifted it to us for our housewarming, which was a command, not a gift. It was the only thing in this house that wasn't our taste. "What is she doing now?" I heard Megan whisper behind me. Having a final nostalgic look. I ignored her. I reached up, my hands touching the gaudy, ornate gold frame. With a firm, steady motion, I pushed the entire painting to the side. It swung open on silent, well-oiled hinges, revealing not the wall behind it, but the flat gray steel of a digital wall safe. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. "What in the hell is that?" Dante's voice was sharp, his greed instantly replacing his confusion. He rushed forward a few steps. "Is that where Marcus kept his gold? Is that where he hid his assets?" I looked back at him over my shoulder. "Something like that," I said. I turned back to the safe and placed my thumb on the biometric scanner. It beeped green. Then I entered the 6-digit code. 0819220. The date Marcus and I officially registered Vance Duvernay Innovations as an LLC. Not our wedding anniversary, not his birthday. The day our real life's work began. Jeremiah knew the code to the main office safe. He probably even knew the code to Marcus's personal desk safe. But this one was ours. "You installed a secret safe," Megan whispered, her lawyer's mind finally catching up, realizing this was something planned, something she didn't know about. "Behind their portrait. Marcus installed it." I corrected her as the heavy steel door clicked and swung open. "He knew who his family was." My eyes scanned the contents. There was no gold, No cash, no jewelry, just a single perfectly organized leather-bound folder. I pulled it out. The leather felt cool and smooth in my trembling hands. I closed the safe door with a solid, definitive thud. I turned around to face them. Jeremiah was standing in the middle of the room, his fists clenched, his face a mask of thunderous rage. Dante and Megan were poised, watching the folder in my hand, like it was a snake. "You forgot one crucial thing, Jeremiah." I said, my voice quiet, but it carried across the room. "One very, very important detail in your perfect little plan." He took a step toward me. "What is that?" He growled the word low and threatening. "What is in that folder, you little snake?" I let him take another step. I wanted him to be close. I wanted him to see my face when I said it. I licked my thumb and slowly, deliberately opened the folder, pulling out the top document. I held it up so he could read the title embossed in clear legal type. I smiled, a real smile this time, cold and full of steel. "You don't own this house," I said. "I do." Megan Ever, the aggressive lawyer, snatched the folder from my hand. "Let me see that. You probably printed something fake off the internet." She flipped it open, her eyes scanning the first page with a smug, dismissive look. I watched her face. It was a study in arrogance collapsing into panic. The color drained from her cheeks. Her eyes widened, scanning the page again, faster this time. Her perfectly glossed lips parted. "Dante," she whispered, her voice suddenly small. "Dante, look at this. Oh my God." Dante, still confused, grabbed the papers from her shaking hand. "What? What is it?" He squinted at the legal text. "A quitclaim deed." "What the hell is a quitclaim deed?" I stepped forward, taking the document back from him gently. "It's a quitclaim deed," I said, my voice resonating with newfound authority. "Signed, notarized, and legally filed with Fulton County 18 months ago." I held it up for all of them to see, my finger pointing to the specific clause. Marcus transferred his entire 100% interest in this property to me, Simone Vance, as my sole and separate property, not as community property. Jeremiah lunged forward and ripped the paper from my grasp. His eyes darted across the text, his face turning a dark mottled red. "Lies!" he roared, waving the paper in the air. "This is a forgery. That's not his signature. You tricked him. You manipulated my dying son." "My son wasn't dying 18 months ago, Jeremiah," I said, my voice like ice. "He was smart, and he was protecting his wife. As for the signature, I have the original notarized copy right here, and I have the video recording of the signing timestamped from the lawyer's office. Do you want to call a handwriting expert, or should we just wait for my attorney?" My mind flashed back to that day, 18 months ago. It was right after Marcus had returned from a tense quarterly meeting at the office. He came home looking older, the light in his eyes dimmed. I sat across from him at this very kitchen table. "Imani," he said, taking my hands, "there's something off with my father and Dante. The numbers aren't adding up. I can't prove anything, but I have a bad feeling." The following week, he took me to Aaliyah's office. He was nervous but resolute. "I need to do this," he told me as he signed the deed. "This house, this is our sanctuary. This is what we built. It's not theirs. It's not part of the company. It's ours. And I need to know, no matter what happens, that you are safe, that no one can ever take this away from you." He didn't just give me a house. He gave me a fortress. And he knew even then who the enemy was. "In other words," I said, bringing myself back to the present, "this is my house. You are uninvited guests. And you," I looked at the two movers, "are in possession of stolen property." "Now, Jeremiah," I said, pulling out my phone, "my security patrol will be here in 1 minute. Would you like to leave on your own or in handcuffs?" I looked Jeremiah dead in the eye. "In other words, you are trespassing in my home. And you," I said to the movers, "are attempting to steal my property." Jeremiah's face contorted. He took a step toward me, his hand raised as if to strike. "You ungrateful little witch! I dare you to call the police!" I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just lifted my chin slightly and looked past his shoulder toward the large bay window that overlooked the circular driveway. "I don't need to," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "They're already here, along with my lawyer." The sound of tires crunching on gravel cut through the tension. A sleek black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled up to the curb, stopping directly behind Jeremiah's silver Bentley. Right behind it, its blue and red lights flashing silently but powerfully in the morning light, a marked Atlanta police patrol car pulled in, blocking the entire driveway. Jeremiah, Dante, and Megan froze. They spun around to see. The driver's door of the G-Wagon opened and a woman stepped out. She was tall, around 40, wearing a sharp, custom-tailored crimson suit that screamed power. Her hair was cut into a sleek, asymmetrical bob. This was Aaliyah Rice, the most feared and respected family law and asset attorney in the state of Georgia. And for the last 10 years, my best friend. She put on her sunglasses, glanced at the police officers getting out of their car, and started walking toward the house, her heels clicking like gunshots on the stone walkway. The front door swung open before Aaliyah even reached for the handle. The two Atlanta police officers, a tall black man and a shorter white woman, flanked her, their hands resting near their belts. They were all business. My family froze. This was not part of their plan. Aaliyah Rice, however, moved like she owned the very air in the room. She was wearing a stunning crimson suit, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. She didn't look at Jeremiah. She didn't look at Dante or Megan. She didn't even look at the police officers behind her. Her eyes found mine. She walked straight past my sputtering father-in-law and pulled me into a fierce, protective hug. I buried my face in her shoulder, inhaling the scent of her expensive perfume, and for the first time in 36 hours, I felt a single solid piece of ground beneath my feet. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," she whispered just for me. "I got here as fast as I could. The traffic on 285 was a nightmare." "I knew you'd come," I whispered back. "Always," she said. She held me for a moment longer, a silent transfer of strength. Then she released me, turned around, and the warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by glacial ice. She finally addressed my father-in-law. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice sharp and clear, "my name is Aaliyah Rice. I am the legal counsel for Simone Vance." She deliberately used my maiden name as part of my married name, a subtle reminder of who I was before them. "As I'm sure your daughter-in-law Megan can attest," Aaliyah continued, nodding at the now pale lawyer, "I am the managing partner at Rice & Associates, and more importantly, I am here on behalf of my client, the sole legal owner of this property." "This is an outrage," Jeremiah finally found his voice. He puffed out his chest. "I am Jeremiah Vance. This is my family's estate. This woman," he pointed at me, "is a trespasser. I want her removed." The male police officer stepped forward. "Sir, we have a report of intruders refusing to leave. Is that what's happening here?" "Yes," Jeremiah yelled. "She is the intruder. Get her out." Aaliyah didn't even raise her voice. She simply opened her leather briefcase and handed the officer the original notarized quitclaim deed. "Officer," she said calmly, "this is a certified copy of the deed to 1450 West Paces Ferry, filed with Fulton County 18 months ago, transferring all ownership to Mrs. Simone Vance. Mr. Vance here," she gestured to Jeremiah, "is the one trespassing, as are his son, his son's wife, and these two men," she pointed to the terrified movers. The officer took the document and began to read it, his partner looking over his shoulder. Jeremiah was sputtering. "That's a fake. It's a forgery. My son would never. He was sick. She manipulated him." "Your son," Aaliyah cut him off, her voice dropping, "was in perfect health 18 months ago, Jeremiah, and my husband, who is a state-certified notary, personally witnessed and recorded the signing. Would you like to see the video evidence as well? Or shall we just stick to the deed?" The female officer looked up from the paper and then at Jeremiah. Her face was stern. Sir, this document appears to be legal and binding. It states clearly that Simone Vance is the sole owner of this residence. We are going to have to ask you and your party to leave the premises. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Dante looked at his father, his bravado completely gone. Dad, what? What does she mean? Jeremiah's face was a terrifying shade of purple. I will not be thrown out of my son's house. It's my house, Jeremiah, I said, finding my voice. It was strong now, backed by Aaliyah, backed by the law, backed by Marcus himself. Megan, who had been silent this whole time, the vase still clutched in her hand, suddenly made a small choking sound. Megan, Dante said, turning to his wife. You're the lawyer. Tell them they can't do this. Megan's eyes were wide, staring at Aaliyah Rice. She knew who Aaliyah was. Everyone in Atlanta's legal community did. She's right, Dante, Megan stammered. A quitclaim deed. If it's notarized and filed, it's ironclad. It supersedes a will. And with that admission, her fingers went limp. The Moroccan vase, the one Marcus and I had carried through the souk, the one Megan had claimed for her own, slipped from her grasp. It hit the marble floor and exploded in a cloud of blue and white ceramic dust, shattered, just like their entire plan. The female officer took charge. Sir, ma'am, you need to exit the property, now. We can discuss the civil matter downtown, but as of this moment you are trespassing. Jeremiah didn't move. He just stared at me, his face a storm of rage and disbelief. The movers had already fled, scrambling out the door the second the police entered. The tall officer put his hand on Jeremiah's arm. Sir, let's go. With a final guttural snarl, Jeremiah ripped his arm away. Don't touch me. I'll walk out on my own. He stalked toward the door, his expensive suit now looking rumpled and defeated. Brenda scurried behind him, sobbing hysterically. Megan, white-faced and trembling, pulled Dante by the arm. Dante, we have to go. We'll call our lawyer. They were forced out onto the grand stone porch, the same porch where Marcus and I used to drink coffee and watch the sunrise. They stood there huddled and humiliated as Aaliyah and I stood in the doorway framed by the two police officers. Jeremiah, his chest heaving, spun around. His finger shaking with rage pointed directly at me. You think you've won, he screamed, his voice echoing across the manicured lawn. You think this is over. You keep the house. You keep this empty, cursed house. It's nothing. It's bricks and wood. He took a step back toward us, his eyes wild. But Vance Innovations, the company, my legacy, that you will never touch. I just watched him, saying nothing. The will, you stupid girl, he spat. Marcus's will. I'm the executor. I've seen it. He knew his duty. He left his shares, his controlling interest to his blood, to me, and to Dante. Dante, seeing an opening, puffed his chest out again, standing beside his father. That's right, Simone. You can stay in your little gilded cage all alone. But we run the company. We control the real money, the real power. He laughed, a desperate cracking sound. We're the future. We're the legacy. You're nothing. You're just a widow in an empty house. Jeremiah nodded, a cruel, triumphant smirk returning to his face. He thought he had just played his trump card. He thought he had finally put me back in my place. Jeremiah's threat hung in the cold morning air. He looked so sure of himself, so confident that he had just delivered the final crushing blow. He believed he still held the ultimate power, the company, the real money. He thought I was just a widow in a house I had won on a technicality. He was wrong. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I didn't even defend myself. Instead, I looked past him to my best friend Aaliyah. She was standing on the top step, watching the scene unfold. And she was smiling. It wasn't a big smile. It was a small, sharp, secret smile, the kind a chess player makes 3 moves before checkmate. That smile gave me all the strength I needed. I turned my gaze back to my father-in-law, who was still breathing heavily, his face flushed with his own sense of victory. You're right, Jeremiah, I said. The will. We absolutely should discuss the will. I'm very much looking forward to the reading. His smirk wavered. My agreement wasn't part of his plan. In fact, I continued, why wait? Aaliyah, you're the executor, aren't you? Aaliyah's smile widened. As a matter of fact, I am. I have the final executed will right here in my briefcase. Then let's read it, I said. Why not do it right now since everyone is already here? I turned my head and called back into the house, my voice echoing into the kitchen. Brenda, you can come out now. Don't hide in the kitchen. This part concerns you too. Jeremiah, Dante, and Megan looked at each other, a new profound confusion replacing their rage. This wasn't how a defeated woman was supposed to act. Aaliyah stepped aside from the doorway, holding it open in a gesture of false hospitality. What a wonderful idea, Simone. A spontaneous reading of the will. Why not? She walked back into my living room, placing her expensive leather briefcase on my console table. She snapped it open with a sound that echoed like a gavel. Jeremiah, Dante, Megan, please, Aaliyah said, her voice dripping with politeness. Do come back inside, but this time as guests. The three of them stood frozen on the porch. The police officers watched impassive. They were trapped. Their arrogance wouldn't let them walk away to admit defeat in any arena. Their greed, their desperate need to know what was in that will and secure their control of the company was a leash. And I was the one holding it. After a long, tense moment, Jeremiah straightened his tie. He thought this was still his game. He thought I was bluffing, that I was just trying to have one last moment of defiance before he claimed his prize. Fine, he snarled. Let's get this over with. Let's see exactly what my son left me. He marched back into the house, his shoes scraping against the ceramic shards of the broken vase. Dante and Megan followed him like obedient shadows, their eyes fixed on Aaliyah's briefcase. Brenda crept in from the kitchen, her face pale, and sat in a small chair in the corner, as far from Jeremiah as she could get. The trap was set. They had all walked right into it. We all sat in the living room. It was a hostile, surreal tableau. Jeremiah and Dante sat stiffly on the one remaining sofa, their arrogance warring with visible confusion. Megan sat beside Dante, her legs crossed, trying to project an air of legal confidence, but I could see her hands trembling slightly in her lap. Brenda, my mother-in-law, had taken a small armchair in the farthest corner of the room, as if trying to make herself invisible. She was twisting a damp handkerchief in her hands, her eyes wide and terrified, darting between Jeremiah and me. The two Atlanta police officers, having confirmed I was the legal owner and that the immediate threat was over, had left. But Aaliyah's two private security guards had not. They stood massive and impassive, flanking the open front door. They were a silent, powerful reminder of who was now in charge. Aaliyah placed her expensive leather briefcase on the glass coffee table. The click of the latches snapping open was the loudest sound in the room. It sounded like a judge's gavel. She pulled out a thick, blue-backed document bound with a red ribbon. It was the original copy of the will. All right, Aaliyah said, her voice cutting through the thick silence. Let's begin. She stood holding the document, the picture of professional authority. My name is Aaliyah Rice. I am the attorney Marcus Vance retained for his estate planning, and I am the sole executor of his last will and testament. Jeremiah scoffed, though it sounded weak. Executor. He always used the family attorney Edelman. He fired Mr. Edelman 2 years ago, Jeremiah. Aaliyah said, her voice like steel. She didn't even look up from her papers. He fired him the day he found out Edelman was playing golf with you and discussing the contents of his portfolio. Marcus valued loyalty and privacy. Megan shifted in her seat. She knew she was hopelessly outmatched. Aaliyah continued, I am now reading from the final legally binding will of Marcus Duvernay Vance, signed and witnessed on May 4th, 2024. My breath caught in my throat. May 4th, 18 months ago. My mind flashed back instantly. That was the exact same week he took me to Aaliyah's office to sign the deed to the house. It wasn't two separate acts of caution. It was one single comprehensive heartbreaking plan. He hadn't just suspected they would betray him, he knew. He knew what they would do. He knew they would come for me the second he was gone. And he had spent his time laying this precise, perfect trap for them. My husband, my brilliant, beautiful husband, was protecting me even from the grave. A single hot tear rolled down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of profound, burning love. Aaliyah cleared her throat, the sound sharp in the quiet room. She unfolded the will. I will now read the last will and testament of Marcus Duvernay Vance. First, let's address the personal assets. She looked directly at me as she read. To my beloved wife, Simone Duvernay Vance, I leave all of my personal effects, our art collection, all retirement accounts, including my 401k and pension, and the full payout of my corporate life insurance policy. She paused, then looked up at Jeremiah, which for the record has a value of $3 million. Megan let out a sound like a strangled gasp. $3 million. I could see the furious calculation in her eyes. Dante just looked stunned. Jeremiah's face darkened, but he said nothing. He was still waiting for the company. Aaliyah continued, turning her gaze to the corner of the room where Brenda was trying to blend into the wallpaper. To my mother, Brenda Vance, she read, I bequeath a monthly stipend of $5,000 to be paid from the estate for the remainder of her natural life. Brenda let out a small, audible sigh of relief. Her hand went to her chest. This bequest, Aaliyah added, her voice hardening slightly, is strictly conditional. It is provided only with the stipulation that she does not in any way legally contest or join in contesting any part of this will. If she does, the stipend is immediately and irrevocably terminated. Brenda's relief vanished, replaced by a look of sheer terror as she glanced at Jeremiah. Marcus had known his mother. He knew her weakness. He knew she could be controlled by Jeremiah, so he gave her a financial reason to stay neutral. Jeremiah slammed his hand on the arm of the sofa. Get on with it, the company. What about the company? Aaliyah looked up at him slowly, her expression unreadable. She let the silence stretch out, making him wait. Finally, she turned back to the document. And finally, she read, her voice clear and precise, regarding my 51% controlling interest in Vance Innovations. Jeremiah and Dante both leaned forward, their entire bodies rigid with anticipation. This was it. This was the prize. Jeremiah and Dante physically leaned forward. This was the only part they had ever cared about. The house was a trophy, but the company was the kingdom. Jeremiah saw it as his birthright, a legacy he had created, even though Marcus had been the one to save it and build it into an empire. Dante just saw it as a limitless credit card. Aaliyah paused deliberately, letting the tension build. She looked up from the document, first at Jeremiah, then at Dante. Regarding my 51% controlling interest in Vance Innovations. She read, her voice slow and methodical. I bequeath, devise, and give all said shares in their entirety. Jeremiah was literally holding his breath. To my father, Jeremiah Vance, and my brother Dante Vance, to be shared equally between them. The explosion of relief from their side of the room was immediate. Jeremiah let out a loud "Ha!" and slapped his knee, a broad, triumphant smirk spreading across his face. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated victory. Dante actually clapped his hands together, a sharp single clap of joy. He turned and kissed Megan, who was smiling, her confidence flooding back. They had won. They had weathered the storm of the house, and now they had secured the real prize. Well then, Jeremiah said, already moving to stand up as if the meeting was over. It seems we're all clear on Marcus's wishes, if you'll excuse us. Aaliyah held up a single manicured finger. I haven't finished the sentence, Mr. Vance. Jeremiah froze halfway out of his chair. Aaliyah looked back down at the will. She took a theatrical breath and continued reading. To be shared equally between them, subject to one condition. The blood drained from Jeremiah's face. The smile on Dante's lips twitched and vanished. "What?" Jeremiah said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "What condition? There are no conditions on an inheritance." "There are," Aaliyah said, "when the deceased puts them there, and this one is very specific." Megan the lawyer spoke up, her voice suddenly sharp with suspicion. "What kind of condition?" Aaliyah looked up again, her eyes landing on me. I gave her the slightest nod. This was it, the moment Marcus had planned. Aaliyah turned back to Jeremiah. "A very simple condition. The transfer of shares is contingent upon a full independent forensic audit of the company's financials, books, and contracts for the past 5 years." The room went utterly and completely silent. "What did you say?" Jeremiah whispered, sitting back down, his arrogance gone, replaced by a cold, visible dread. "A forensic audit," Aaliyah repeated, "of everything, every invoice, every vendor, every expense account, all of it." She then added the final, beautiful, terrible line. "And the transfer of shares is only finalized upon final approval of that audit by my wife, Simone Vance." Aaliyah looked up from the will, her eyes locking onto Jeremiah. "The condition is as follows," she read, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "The transfer of these shares is entirely contingent upon the successful completion of a full independent third-party forensic audit of all company financials, vendor contracts, and expense reports for the past 5 years. Jeremiah's face, which had been pale with dread, now turned a dark, furious red. "Audit!" he bellowed, slamming his fist down on the arm of the sofa. "That's an insult! It's preposterous! An insult to my name, to my family." Dante, meanwhile, looked like he was going to be sick. He had gone completely white, a sheen of cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Audit!" he stammered, his voice cracking. "But why? Why would Marcus want that? Everything is transparent. Everything is fine." He was looking at his father, then at Megan, desperately seeking reassurance. "It doesn't matter why," Aaliyah said, her voice devoid of emotion. "It only matters that it is. It is the binding condition of this bequest. No audit, no shares." She let that sink in for a moment before delivering the final crushing detail. "And," she continued, "should my father and brother refuse to comply with this audit, or should the audit be delayed by their actions, their claim as heirs becomes null and void. In that event, the 51% controlling interest will immediately be transferred in its entirety to the M.I. Vance Trust, to be managed by its sole trustee." She looked directly at me. "My wife, Simone Vance." The room was silent again. The trap was perfect. Marcus had left them no way out. They couldn't refuse the audit because that meant they lost everything instantly. But it was clear from their reactions that an audit was the last thing on earth they wanted. Megan was frantically whispering something to Dante, who just shook his head, looking dazed. Jeremiah was breathing heavily, his eyes fixed on me, the hatred replaced by a new terrifying emotion: calculation. He thought he could still control me. I decided it was time to speak. I leaned forward, resting my hands on my knees, my voice as calm and clear as Aaliyah's. "Well," I said, meeting my father-in-law's gaze, "it seems we have a condition to meet." I turned to Aaliyah. "Please hire the best forensic accounting firm in Atlanta. Price is no object. I guess we're going to have an audit." Aaliyah gave me a sharp, satisfied nod. She gathered her papers, snapping her briefcase shut. "My security team will remain on the premises," she announced to the room, "to ensure my client's safety and to prevent the further removal of any property. I trust my presence is no longer required." She turned and walked out. The 2 security guards repositioned themselves inside the foyer, just outside the living room. They were silent, but their presence was a heavy, unblinking statement of power. The click of the front door closing echoed in the sudden, suffocating silence. It was just us now, the Vances, and me. Megan was staring at the floor, her face pale. Dante was breathing quickly, his eyes darting from me to his father, looking for guidance. It was Jeremiah who finally broke. The rage had drained from his face, leaving behind something I had never seen on him before: fear. He stood up slowly, not as a patriarch but as an old man. He even tried to smile, a grotesque, trembling gesture. "Simone," he said, his voice completely changed. It was no longer a boom, it was a plea, a desperate, oily appeal. "Simone, child, you don't have to do this." I just looked at him, my face impassive. "An audit," he said, waving his hand dismissively as if it were a minor inconvenience. "It's just a formality, a suggestion from a lawyer. You know, Marcus, he always listened to his lawyers." I remained silent. "Come on now," he continued, taking a step toward me. I didn't move. "You know how I run things. I'm old-fashioned. The books, they're just a bit messy, that's all. Just a bit disorganized. It's the old way of doing business. A handshake, you know." He was rambling, searching for an excuse that would stick. "All this forensic talk, it's so aggressive. It's not necessary. We're family." Dante, seeing his father's new tactic, quickly jumped in. His voice was high-pitched, laced with panic. "He's right, Simone. An audit. Do you know how much that will cost? We'd have to hire a top firm. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, money that Marcus would have wanted to stay in the company." He was pacing now, his hands flying as he spoke. "It would paralyze us. It would take months. It would freeze our credit lines. Our clients would hear about it. It would destroy the company." "Is that what you want? To destroy everything Marcus built, all because of some clerical messiness?" He stopped breathing hard, looking at me with a wild, desperate hope. "Marcus wouldn't have wanted that, Simone. You know he wouldn't. He loved this company." Their performance was pathetic and revealing. They weren't just worried, they were terrified. I let their words hang in the air for a long, cold moment. I let them squirm in the silence. Finally, I spoke. "Marcus is the one who demanded it, Dante." My voice was quiet, but it cut through their panic like a knife. "He didn't want it. He demanded it. It's right there in his will, a binding legal condition." I stood up and walked over to the broken pieces of the Moroccan vase. I nudged a shard with the toe of my shoe. "So the real question isn't about cost. It's not about messy bookkeeping or old-fashioned ways." I looked up, meeting Dante's sweaty gaze, then Jeremiah's fearful one. "The real question is, what are you so afraid they'll find?" I stared at their terrified faces. The terror in Jeremiah's eyes wasn't just about an audit. It was about a forensic audit. He knew what that meant, and he knew exactly what he had done. And he thought I was just a graphic designer. My mind flashed back a memory so sharp, it felt like it was happening right now, 18 months ago. It wasn't just the week Marcus signed the house over. It was a specific night, a Tuesday. He came home late from the office, looking 10 years older. The usual light in his eyes, the one that always sparked when he saw me, was gone. It was replaced by a deep, weary exhaustion. I remember I was in the kitchen sketching a new logo concept on my tablet. He didn't kiss me hello. He just loosened his tie, sat down heavily at the kitchen island, and buried his face in his hands. I put my stylus down. "Marcus, what is it? What's wrong?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me, his eyes full of a trouble I had never seen before. "Imani," he said, his voice so low I had to lean in to hear him. "My father and Dante, they're doing something reckless, something dishonest." My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "I don't have hard proof," he said, shaking his head. "Not yet, but the numbers aren't adding up. The invoices for materials, the vendor contracts. They're inflated. It's sloppy, but it's hidden just enough." He looked so defeated. "I can't confront them without starting a war," he said. "It would tear the family apart. He would just find a way to cover it up, and he'd blame me for being disloyal." I just listened. I didn't tell him what I was thinking. I didn't tell him what I was capable of. For 5 years, Jeremiah and Dante had dismissed me. To them, I was just the artsy wife, the creative one, the quiet girl from Spelman College who majored in graphic design. They loved to tell their friends at the country club that I made things look pretty. It was their favorite little joke. They were right. I did major in graphic design, but they forgot to ask what my other major was. Spelman College is one of the best HBCUs in the nation. It doesn't just produce artists, it produces leaders. And I didn't just graduate. I graduated summa cum laude, with a dual degree, one in graphic design, and the other the one I never put on my business card, the one I never mentioned at those insufferable family dinners. Forensic accounting. They thought I was just the wife. They thought I was a pretty face who picked out paint colors. They had no idea they were living with the one person on earth who was uniquely qualified to burn their entire fraudulent world to the ground. They thought I was a liability. They were about to find out I was the weapon Marcus had been waiting for. Jeremiah always scoffed at my little hobby. "Good thing Marcus makes the real money," he'd say at Thanksgiving, "so Simone can focus on her little decorating projects." He called my consulting work for other firms playing on the computer. He called me the Chief Aesthetics Officer, a title meant to belittle to reduce my role to picking out paint colors and lobby furniture. He had no idea. He didn't know that playing on the computer meant I had single-handedly designed and implemented the entire digital accounting and project management system for Vance Innovations 3 years ago. Jeremiah hated computers. He trusted paper ledgers. Marcus begged me to modernize them. "They're bleeding money, Amani," Marcus had pleaded. "I can build the buildings, but I can't track the expenses. Dad's system is from 1985. Please, I need your brain, not just your eye." So I did. I built them a fortress, a beautiful, streamlined, user-friendly system that looked simple on the surface. Making it look pretty, as Jeremiah would say. But beneath the clean interface, I built it like a forensic accountant. I built it with back doors. I created hidden audit trails, silent alerts, and duplicate ledgers that archived every single transaction, even deleted ones. I created a master key access point that was completely invisible to any user, including Jeremiah and Dante. It was my personal insurance policy against their known incompetence and my suspected greed. Marcus was the architect, the visionary. He built the soaring glass towers that were reshaping the Atlanta skyline. I was the strategist. I built the brand. I built the financial system. And I built the trap. Jeremiah and Dante thought they were just logging expenses into a simple program. They had no idea that for 3 years I had been silently watching every dollar they moved, every invoice they faked, every vendor they created. They had no idea that I, the artsy wife, knew more about the company's financial health than they did. They thought I was just a graphic designer. They didn't know I was also their judge-jury, and as of today, their executioner. I looked at their terrified faces. The terror in Jeremiah's eyes wasn't just about an audit. It was about a forensic audit. He knew what that meant. And he knew exactly what he had done. And he thought I was just a graphic designer. My mind flashed back a memory so sharp it felt like it was happening right now. 18 months ago. It wasn't just the week Marcus signed the house over. It was a specific night. A Tuesday. He came home late from the office, looking 10 years older. The usual light in his eyes, the one that always sparked when he saw me, was gone. It was replaced by a deep, weary exhaustion. I remember I was in the kitchen sketching a new logo concept on my tablet. He didn't kiss me hello. He just loosened his tie, sat down heavily at the kitchen island, and buried his face in his hands. I put my stylus down. "Marcus? What is it? What's wrong?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me, his eyes full of a trouble I had never seen before. "Imani," he said, his voice so low I had to lean in to hear him. "My father and Dante, they're doing something reckless, something dishonest." My blood went cold. What do you mean? I don't have hard proof, he said, shaking his head. Not yet, but the numbers aren't adding up. I see these invoices, Imani. They're from a new supplier, Southern Pine Lumber. The prices, they're just wrong. They're 30% higher than market rate, at least. I had stopped sketching. 30% for what? Premium materials, apparently. He'd sighed, running his hands through his hair. I asked Dante about it. He brushed it off. Said it was specialty heart pine for the new Ansley Park project. Said I didn't understand the high-end materials market. He told me to leave the numbers to him and just draw the pretty buildings. My blood had run cold. Leave the numbers to him. Dante, who couldn't balance his own checkbook. But when I asked for the spec sheets on this premium lumber, Marcus continued, he got defensive, told me I was micromanaging, told me Dad approved the vendor. I knew then. I knew in my gut. That night, I waited until 2 a.m. I waited until I could hear the deep, steady breathing of Marcus sleeping beside me. I slipped out of bed, went to my office, and shut the door. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from my monitor. I logged into the system, not as Simone Vance, the user, but as Admin Zero, the architect, the ghost in the machine. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I pulled up the vendor file for Southern Pine Lumber. The address listed was a P.O. box in Marietta. The contact number was a burner cell phone. The business registration number. I ran it through the Georgia Secretary of State database. No results found. Southern Pine Lumber did not exist. It was a shell company. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a cold, sick feeling rising in my throat. They were stealing. They were actively, blatantly stealing from their own son, their own brother. But who? Dante was too stupid to set this up himself. He didn't have the legal knowledge. This was clean. This was structured. This had Megan written all over it. I dug deeper. I used my forensic accounting tools to trace the P.O. box rental. It was paid for with a credit card. A credit card I couldn't immediately trace. But the articles of incorporation for the shell company, they had to be filed by someone. I cross-referenced the burner number with legal filings in the state database. And there it was. Not Southern Pine Lumber, a different name. MVLLC. The name was meaningless, but the registered agent was not. The registered agent was Megan Blackwell, her maiden name, Megan Vance. My lovely, polished white sister-in-law, the lawyer, the one with the classic taste. She had set up a dummy corporation, registered it under her maiden name, and was funneling millions of dollars out of Vance Innovations, millions, right into her and Dante's pockets. They were stealing from Marcus, from me, and they were doing it right under my nose, all while patting me on the head, calling my work rustic, and dismissing me as the artsy wife. They thought I was just a graphic designer. They thought I was too simple, too Decatur to ever figure it out. They thought I was just here to make things look pretty. They had no idea that I was the only person in the world who could see exactly how ugly they were. And now I had the proof. My memory of that night in my office 18 months ago fades. I am back in the present. The living room is completely silent except for Dante, who is still stammering, still trying to argue his way out of the will. It's just not practical, Simone. He pleads, his voice high and thin. It will paralyze the company, the cost. I look at him. Then I look at Megan, who is staring at her hands, her face a pale, frozen mask. Then I look at Jeremiah. You're right, Dante, I say softly. He stops talking, shocked by my sudden agreement. The books are messy. I continue, my voice calm and conversational. Extremely messy. I'm sure the audit will be a very complicated process. I stand up and walk over to the window, pretending to look out at the lawn. Then I turn back. For example, I say, as if the thought just occurred to me, I was looking at the ledgers just last week. All those payments to Southern Pine Lumber. My goodness. I watch Megan's head snap up. Her eyes are wide. Millions of dollars, I say, letting the words hang in the air. Just millions flowing out month after month for premium materials. I am certain the auditors will be very, very interested in that particular vendor. I am not looking at Jeremiah or Dante. I am looking right at Megan. It's like I've just pulled the pin on a grenade and rolled it gently into her lap. The blood doesn't just drain from her face, it vanishes. She goes a ghostly, chalky white. Her hands, which were clenched in her lap, are now gripping the sofa cushions so tightly, her knuckles are white. She knows. She knows that I know. Dante, oblivious as ever, just looks confused. Southern pine lumber, he scoffs, trying to regain his footing. That's our best supplier, Dad, and I vetted them ourselves. They give us premium materials, right, Dad? Megan's eyes flash to her husband. It's a look of pure, unadulterated panic. Shut up, Dante, she hisses. The words are sharp, desperate, a warning. What? Dante says, looking at his wife, genuinely bewildered. It's true, they're... But it's too late. Megan's reaction has confirmed everything. Jeremiah, who has been watching this exchange like a hawk, slowly turns his head. He looks from Megan's terrified face to Dante's clueless one, and then finally, to me. The panic in his eyes is replaced by a cold, dawning horror. He finally understands. This isn't just about an audit. This isn't just a condition in a will. This is a prosecution. You, he whispers the single word hoarse, his entire body deflating. You already know. He's not asking a question. He's stating a fact. I let the silence stretch out, let them all drown in it. I look at Brenda in the corner, who is rocking back and forth crying. I look at Dante, who is finally putting the pieces together, his mouth hanging open. I look at Megan, who looks like she's about to throw up. And finally I look at Jeremiah, the patriarch, the king, the man who just tried to throw me out of my own home. Yes, Jeremiah, I say. I know everything. Dante looks like I've just slapped him. Jeremiah seems to shrink, the bluster and rage gone, replaced by the hollow look of a defeated old man. But Megan is different. She's a lawyer. She understands exactly what forensic audit and shell company mean. She knows the legal terms. She knows what fraud and conspiracy and RICO charges look like. She knows exactly what kind of prison time they are facing. And in an instant she changes tactics. The mask of the smug, condescending wife cracks, and she completely collapses. It's a performance worthy of an Oscar. Her face crumples, and she lets out a gut-wrenching sob, a sound so loud it echoes in the huge room. She slides off the sofa and lands on her knees on the floor on the shards of the broken Moroccan vase. Simone, she wails, crawling forward a few feet on her hands and knees. Simone, please, please, you can't. Dante is stunned. Megan, what are you doing? Get up. No, she screams, tears streaming down her face, her mascara starting to run. I can't let him take the fall for this, I can't. She looks up at me, her eyes wide with what looks like desperate, terrified honesty. It wasn't Dante. I swear to you it was me. It was all me. I just stand there watching her. I don't move. I don't speak. Dante, he's not smart like that, she sobs, throwing her own husband under the bus in a different way. He doesn't understand corporate law. He doesn't know how to structure these things. But I do. I'm a lawyer. It was my idea. All of it. Megan, what are you talking about? Dante yells, his voice a mix of fear and confusion. What was your idea, Mom? Southern Pine, she screams at him. The vendor account, I set it up. I filed the paperwork under my maiden name. I created the shell, I faked the invoices, I did it. I did it all. She turns back to me, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. Dante he just signed what I told him to sign. He trusts me. He loves me. He had no idea what he was signing. He thought it was just business. She's crawling toward me now. She actually reaches out and grabs the hem of my pants. I instinctively pull my leg back from her touch. Please, Simone, she begs. He's your brother-in-law. He's Marcus's brother. You can't let him go to jail for my mistake. It's my fault. Punish me. Tell the police. It was me, but leave him alone. He's a father. Think of my children. Think of your nieces. Please. Dante just stands there, his mouth open, looking back and forth between me and his weeping, confessing wife. Megan, you lied to me. You told me that was a standard vendor account. You told me your father's firm vetted it. I almost have to admire her. It's a masterful move. She's playing her last desperate card. She knows exactly how this looks. The repentant wife, the grieving widow, the devastated brother. She's painting herself as the mastermind, the evil, manipulative white woman who tricked her trusting black husband and father-in-law. She is trying to sacrifice herself, thinking I won't have the stomach to take down her, the mother of my nieces. She thinks I'll take pity, that I'll see her as the sole villain, and Dante as just another one of her victims. She's trying to save him, to save their assets by offering herself as the lamb for the slaughter. She is still underestimating me. She thinks this is still about emotion. She thinks I'm sentimental. She thinks after all this that I'm weak. She has no idea that I know Dante was in on it from the very beginning. She has no idea that I have the real evidence, and she has no idea what I'm about to do next. I let Megan sob on the floor for a few more seconds. I let the sound of her fake despair fill the room. Brenda was looking at her with pity. Dante was looking at her with a strange, dawning horror, as if he was finally understanding the depth of the crime she had just confessed to. I walked over to her, not to comfort her, not to pat her on the back. I stood directly over her, forcing her to look up at me from her pathetic position on the floor, her mascara running down her cheeks. "Are you done?" I asked, her sobs hitched. "Are you confessing, Megan?" I continued, my voice cold as stone. "Good. It's smart to confess when you're caught. It might even look good to a judge." She flinched. "But you're wrong about one very important thing," I said, looking over at Dante. He knew. He knew everything." "That's a lie," Dante shouted, finding his voice. "I didn't." She just said I didn't. I trusted her." "Oh, you trusted her, all right," I said. "But you also approved the payments. You're the one who told Marcus it was premium material. You're the one who told him to leave the numbers to you. You were in on it from the start." Jeremiah stood up, his face a thundercloud. "You can't prove that that's hearsay. She just confessed it was all her. You have no proof that Dante knew." He spat the word proof like it was his final shield. He was right. Her confession against his denial was just a he said she said situation. They were counting on me not having the specific email, the specific recording of Dante admitting he knew it was a scam. I looked at Jeremiah. I almost smiled. "Proof?" I asked. "Jeremiah, you still don't get it, do you?" I shook my head, a small, sad gesture. "I don't need a single piece of paper as proof. I don't need an email. I don't need a recording." "Why?" he snarled. "Because you're just going to lie." "No," I said, walking back towards the fireplace, towards the center of the room. I turned to face them all. "Because Dante's entire career, his entire position as manager, was a trap, set by Marcus, and by me." Dante's confused face, Megan's panicked one, Jeremiah's sudden calculating stillness. They were all waiting. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I was just the graphic designer, the artsy wife trying to play a game I didn't understand. They were wrong. This was the biggest payoff, the one Marcus and I had planned together in this very house 18 months ago in the dead of night. I remember it so clearly. After I had shown him the proof, the shell company, the fake invoices, Megan's maiden name, he didn't get angry. He got quiet. He sat in his study for hours. When he came out, his eyes were cold with a resolve I had never seen. "You can't divorce them, honey," I had told him. "He's your father." "No," he said. "But I can build a cage, a legal ironclad cage, and I need your help to do it." The next day, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. He didn't accuse his father of theft. He used their own greed against them. He announced a strategic restructuring of Vance Innovations designed to streamline operations and maximize profitability. He created a new impressive-sounding department, the Risk Management and Brand Strategy Division. He told Jeremiah and Dante that this new division would handle all the boring stuff, brand oversight, insurance, legal compliance, and vendor approvals, so they could be free to do what they did best: make deals and manage operations. And then, in a move of pure genius, he nominated me, Simone Vance, as the head of that new division. Jeremiah and Dante had laughed. They thought it was a joke. They thought Marcus was giving his artsy wife a fake title to make her feel important. Brand strategy, Jeremiah had scoffed. So you'll pick new colors for the logo? Exactly, I had said, smiling sweetly. And make sure all our vendors align with the brand. They were so blinded by their arrogance, so thrilled with their own new titles. Jeremiah as chairman, Dante as president of Southern Operations, that they signed the restructuring documents without even reading the fine print. They never read the bylaws. They never read the one crucial clause Marcus and Aaliyah had buried on page 42. The clause that stated the head of risk management and brand strategy, me, had final binding and non-overridable approval on all corporate expenditures, contracts, and vendor payments exceeding $50,000. They thought they had given me a playpen. They had given me the keys to the entire kingdom. They had no idea that for the last 18 months, not a single dollar has left that company without my digital signature. They didn't know that the artsy wife they mocked was the one quietly signing off on every fake invoice they submitted, letting them build the case against themselves, one fraudulent wire transfer at a time. A trap, Dante repeats, his voice cracking. What are you talking about? I'm the president of Southern Operations. I manage a $300 million portfolio. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. He has no idea how much of a pawn he has been. You're the what? I ask, feigning mild surprise. Oh, Dante. Honey. No. I look at him the way a teacher would look at a child who just got the math problem spectacularly wrong. Did you really think, I say, my voice soft but carrying across the silent room, that Marcus, my husband, a man who could calculate structural loads in his head, did you really think he would let you, a man who can't even balance his own bank account, manage a $300 million portfolio? Dante flinches. I do. I make the deals, I sign the contracts. Yes, you do. I agree, nodding. You sign the contracts. You take the clients to expensive steak dinners. You play the part. You are the president of Southern Operations. I let the words hang there before I deliver the killing blow. That's a fake title, Dante. A prestige title. Marcus created it for you. That's a lie, he sputters, looking to Jeremiah for help. But Jeremiah is silent, watching me, his eyes dark with a terrible dawning understanding. Is it? I ask. Think about it. Has a single one of your decisions ever been final? Every contract you negotiated, every vendor you approved, every check you signed over $50,000, didn't it always have to go to one more department for final review? Dante's face is blank. He's trying to remember. The Risk Management and Brand Strategy Division, I supply helpfully. That's me, in case you forgot. That was just for brand alignment, he stammers, for the logo, and legal. That's what you thought it was, I say. But that title, that was just a polite way of saying, Simone has to approve every single thing you do so you don't bankrupt the company, you fool. I turn to Megan, who is still on the floor, her fake sobs frozen in her throat. Every decision he made, I say to her, every one of his executive actions, it all came to my desk, every single one, including all the invoices from your little shell company, Southern Pine Lumber. Every single one of them had to be personally approved by me. Megan's head snaps up from the floor. Her fake tears are gone, replaced by a raw, undiluted terror. She finally understands. Dante is still lost, looking back and forth between us, his mind too slow to catch up. I look at him. Every single invoice from Southern Pine Lumber that you signed, Dante. I say, my voice cutting through the silence. Every single fraudulent inflated bill for premium lumber that you passed on to accounting. It landed in my inbox for final approval. Dante's mouth opens, but no sound comes out. And do you know what I did with them, Dante? I continue. Every single one. He just stares at me completely clueless. I approve them, I say. Megan lets out a small, strangled sound. Every single one. For 18 months. I approved the wire transfers. I signed off on the payments. I watched as you and Megan and Jeremiah here. I nod to my father-in-law, siphoned millions of dollars from my husband's company. But why, Dante stammers, if you knew, why would you? Because you were stupid, I say flatly. You were arrogant. You thought I was just the artsy wife. You thought I was just signing papers I didn't understand. You never ever thought I was also saving them. I tap my temple with my finger. Forensic accounting, Dante. I didn't just approve them, I archived them. I saved every single wire transfer confirmation. I saved every fake invoice. I built a file. A beautiful, detailed, ironclad file of your entire criminal conspiracy. For 18 long months, I let you keep going. I let you steal just to see how deep your greed went. Jeremiah, who has been standing by the sofa frozen, suddenly sways. He stumbles back and collapses into the armchair. He's not just angry anymore. He's not just afraid. He's defeated. He stares at me, his face ashen, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. You, he whispers, his voice rattling in his chest. You knew. You've known. For 18 months. And you let us. He's finally pieced it all together. The will, the audit, the house, my calmness. This wasn't a reaction to their attack this morning. This was a counter-offensive, a war I had been planning while they were still celebrating their first victory. I look at the man who tried to destroy me, the man who called me a snake, the man who wanted to throw me out onto the street with nothing. Yes, Jeremiah. I say, my voice cold and final. I let you build your own gallows. And then this morning you were stupid enough to hand me the rope and ask me to tie the knot. I let you hang yourselves. That's exactly what I did. I looked at Jeremiah's broken form slumped in the armchair. He wasn't a patriarch anymore. He was just a criminal who'd been caught. Marcus loved his father. I said, my voice softer now, filling the dead air. He loved you, Jeremiah. He respected you, even when you didn't deserve it. I walked over to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn that Marcus had loved. He knew he couldn't confront you directly. He knew you would paint him as the villain, the ungrateful son. He knew you would use family loyalty as a shield to cover your crimes. He knew it would break his mother. He knew it would destroy everything. I turned back to face them. He knew he couldn't fight you emotionally while he was alive, I said. So he did the only thing he could. He gave me the legal tools to protect myself after he was gone. He armed me. He trusted me. Megan, who was still a heap on the floor, let out a low, miserable moan. Jeremiah just stared at his hands, his breathing ragged and shallow. Dante looked completely catatonic, his eyes vacant. Brenda was crying silently in the corner. The only sounds in the room were the sounds of their world ending, Jeremiah's gasping breaths, Megan's pathetic, defeated sobs. Finally, Jeremiah looked up. His eyes were red not with tears, but with a final, desperate burst of defiance. So what? He whispered, his voice a gravelly wreck. So what, Simone? He pushed himself up, his body trembling but his voice rising with a last surge of his old tyrannical anger. You've proven your point. You're smart. You're smarter than us, you and Marcus. You played us for fools. Congratulations. He spread his hands wide. So what's next? You'll call the police. You'll send your old father-in-law to prison. Fine. He was shouting now, his face contorted. Do it. Let the company collapse. Let Vance Innovations, everything my son built, everything I built, Let it all burn to the ground. He pointed a shaking finger at me. Let it all turn to ash. Because that's what will happen. Without us, that company is nothing. It will be tied up in lawsuits for a decade. The clients will flee. The banks will call their loans. It will be worthless. He smiled a wild, broken smile. And you'll be left with nothing. Nothing but this house. You'll get your revenge, but you'll be just as broke as us. You'll get nothing. Jeremiah's desperate, furious words echoed in the high-ceilinged room. You'll get nothing! He stood there panting a broken king in his ruined castle, clinging to one last pathetic piece of leverage. If he couldn't have the company, he would burn it to the ground and me with it. He believed this was his final, spiteful victory. He was wrong. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't even look angry. I just laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a soft, almost gentle sound. A sound of pure, cold pity. And it was more terrifying than any scream I could have unleashed. Jeremiah's face, flushed with rage, went slack. Dante's jaw, which had been set in a mask of defiance, fell open. Megan, who was still crumpled on the floor, stopped her fake sobbing and looked up, her eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. Wrong again, Jeremiah, I said, my voice quiet. What? He whispered, his last bit of anger deflating. You're wrong. Again. You are still underestimating me. Even now. After all this. I slowly shook my head, a look of genuine disappointment on my face. You think my plan was just to catch you, to run to a judge with my little file of your crimes, like a child running to a teacher? You think I'm that sentimental? That I'm that small? Megan, the lawyer, was the first one to understand. I saw the blood drain from her face as she realized this wasn't just a legal battle. This was a corporate takeover. You think, I continued, that I would let the company Marcus and I built, the company I poured my soul into, just burn to the ground with you? You think I'd let my DI heritage be destroyed just to punish you? I walked over to the glass coffee table and picked up the now useless copy of the will. I folded it neatly in half. You think I just saved the evidence? You think all I did for 18 months was just watch you steal? I looked at all of them one by one. Brenda hiding in the corner, Dante the hollow man, Jeremiah the failed patriarch, and Megan the C-list con artist. I let the silence stretch out thick and heavy until I could feel their panic rising. Then I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than any shout. I didn't just watch Jeremiah. I acted. Jeremiah's threat of mutually assured destruction, his promise to burn the company to the ground, hangs in the air. He believes he's just checkmated me. He thinks I'll back down to save what's left of Marcus's legacy. I let the silence sit for a moment. I watched the pathetic hope flicker in his eyes. Jeremiah, I say, and my voice is soft, almost disappointed. You still think I'm a graphic designer? He frowns, confused by the non sequitur. What? You think my plan was just to catch you, to run to a judge with my little file of your crimes like a child running to a teacher? You think I'm that sentimental? That I'm that small? Megan, the lawyer, is the first one to understand. I see the blood drain from her face as she realizes this wasn't just a legal battle. This was a corporate takeover. You think, I continue, that I would let the company Marcus and I built, the company I poured my soul into, just burn to the ground with you? You think I'd let my heritage be destroyed just to punish you? I walk over to the glass coffee table and pick up the now useless copy of the will. I fold it neatly in half. You think I just saved the evidence? You think all I did for 18 months was just watch you steal? I look at all of them one by one. Brenda hiding in the corner, Dante the hollow man, Jeremiah the failed patriarch, and Megan the C-list con artist. I let the silence stretch out thick and heavy until I could feel their panic rising. Then I lean in, my voice dropping to a whisper that is more terrifying than any shout. I didn't just watch Jeremiah. I acted. What? He whispers his last bit of anger deflating. You're right, I say. I approved every single fraudulent invoice you sent me. I signed off on every wire transfer to Megan's fake company. I helped you steal. You are absolutely right. Megan, who is still on the floor, lets out a low, confused sound. But you, I say, my voice suddenly like ice. You got so sloppy. You got so greedy. You were so busy watching your fake Southern Pine Lumber account grow, you never bothered to check the other side of the ledger. You never read the other reports I was filing. What are you talking about? Dante asks, his voice cracking. I'm talking about counterbalancing, I say. I'm a forensic accountant, you fools. It's what we do. We balance the books. Megan's head snaps up. No! She breathes her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. You wouldn't. You couldn't. Oh, but I could, I say, smiling at her. And I did. For every single dollar you siphoned off to Southern Pine Lumber, I executed a parallel transfer, a strategic branding and risk management fee paid directly from the net profits of Vance Innovations to a separate private LLC, a legal transfer. A transfer that I, as head of brand strategy, was fully authorized to make. A transfer that Marcus himself pre-approved. For 18 months, Jeremiah, I say, while you and Dante and Megan were stealing, I was saving. For every million you stole, I moved $1 million, legally, cleanly, into an account none of you even knew existed. Just as the full weight of my words hangs in the air, the front door opens. My family, frozen in their tableau of horror, jumps at the sound. Aaliyah Rice walks back in. She wasn't waiting at the gate. She was just outside on the porch, giving me the space to handle my family, but ready to step in for the kill. She holds her phone in her hand, as if she just finished a call. Pardon the interruption, she says, her voice smooth and professional. She walks back to the center of the room, standing beside me. I just wanted to clarify a point for Mr. Vance, since he seems so concerned about the company's assets. Jeremiah just stares at her, his mouth open. Aaliyah looks at her phone. Yes, I just confirmed with my office. The private limited liability company, the one Simone was referring to, it's called M.I. Vance Holdings. She looks at me, then at the family. M.I. for Marcus and Imani. Dante just shakes his head, not understanding. So what, another fake company? Oh, it's very real, Dante. Aaliyah says, her smile sharp. Registered with the state of Georgia, fully compliant, and fully funded. She looks at Jeremiah. For the past 18 months, while you, your son, and your daughter-in-law were busy moving money into Southern Pine Lumber, Mrs. Vance, in her capacity as head of risk management and brand strategy, was also moving money. She was legally transferring net profits after your little theft into M.I. Vance Holdings. These transfers were filed as strategic consulting and brand development fees. Aaliyah pauses, letting them absorb the legality of it. Over that 18-month period, Aaliyah continues, Mrs. Vance legally, and with the full approval of the CEO, Marcus Vance transferred just under $12 million. $12 million, Brenda whispers from the corner, her hand flying to her mouth. Megan, who is still on the floor, looks like she's been struck. That's impossible. That's theft. That's more than we took. No, dear, I correct her gently. That's the difference between you and me. You committed theft. I executed a corporate restructuring. I look at Jeremiah. Every single transfer was co-signed and approved by Marcus himself before his passing. He knew exactly where his company's real profits were going. They were going to the only person he trusted to protect them. I walk over to Jeremiah, who is still slumped in his chair, looking like a ghost. You see, Jeremiah, I say, leaning down slightly. You were right. Making things look pretty is a very expensive job. It cost you $12 million. Jeremiah's desperate, furious words echoed in the high-ceilinged room. You'll get nothing. He stood there panting, a broken king in his ruined castle, clinging to one last pathetic piece of leverage. If he couldn't have the company, he would burn it to the ground and me with it. He believed this was his final spiteful victory. He was wrong. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't even look angry. I just laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a soft, almost gentle sound. A sound of pure, cold pity. And it was more terrifying than any scream I could have unleashed. Jeremiah's face, flushed with rage, went slack. Dante's jaw, which had been set in a mask of defiance, fell open. Megan, who was still crumpled on the floor, stopped her fake sobbing and looked up, her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. "Wrong again, Jeremiah," I said, my voice quiet. "What?" he whispered, his last bit of anger deflating. "You're wrong, again. You are still underestimating me, even now, after all this." I slowly shook my head, a look of genuine disappointment on my face. "You think my plan was just to catch you, to run to a judge with my little file of your crimes, like a child running to a teacher? You think I'm that sentimental? That I'm that small?" Megan, the lawyer, was the first one to understand. I saw the blood drain from her face as she realized this wasn't just a legal battle, this was a corporate takeover. "You think," I continued, "that I would let the company Marcus and I built, the company I poured my soul into, just burn to the ground with you? You think I'd let my heritage be destroyed just to punish you?" I walked over to the glass coffee table and picked up the now useless copy of the will. I folded it neatly in half. "You think I just saved the evidence? You think all I did for 18 months was just watch you steal?" I looked at all of them one by one. Brenda hiding in the corner, Dante the hollow man, Jeremiah the failed patriarch, and Megan the C-list con artist. I let the silence stretch out thick and heavy until I could feel their panic rising. Then I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than any shout. "I didn't just watch Jeremiah. I acted." "What?" he whispers, his last bit of anger deflating. "You're right," I say. "I approved every single fraudulent invoice you sent me. I signed off on every wire transfer to Megan's fake company. I helped you steal. You are absolutely right." Megan, who is still on the floor, lets out a low, confused sound. "But you," I say, my voice suddenly like ice. "You got so sloppy. You got so greedy. You were so busy watching your fake Southern Pine lumber account grow, you never bothered to check the other side of the ledger. You never read the other reports I was filing." "What are you talking about?" Dante asks, his voice cracking. "I'm talking about counterbalancing," I say. "I'm a forensic accountant, you fools. It's what we do. We balance the books." Megan's head snaps up. "No!" She breathes, her eyes wide with a new dawning horror. You wouldn't. You couldn't." "Oh, but I could," I say, smiling at her. "And I did. For every single dollar you siphoned off to Southern Pine Lumber, I executed a parallel transfer, a strategic branding and risk management fee paid directly from the net profits of Vance Innovations to a separate private LLC. A legal transfer. A transfer that I, as head of brand strategy, was fully authorized to make. A transfer that Marcus himself pre-approved. For 18 months, Jeremiah," I say, "while you and Dante and Megan were stealing, I was saving. For every million you stole, I moved 1 million, legally, cleanly, into an account none of you even knew existed." Aaliyah's words land with the force of a physical blow. A secured creditor, with the right to liquidate. She will take everything. The room is absolutely still. Jeremiah is staring at Aaliyah, his face a mask of gray, abject horror. Dante is shaking his head, just a small, repetitive, "No, no, no," as if he can deny reality. Megan is just gone. Her eyes are blank. The calculating lawyer has left the building, leaving only a terrified, broken woman in her place. And then a new sound enters the room, a low, keening wail. It's coming from the corner, from Brenda, my mother-in-law, who has been silent, frozen, a witness to her family's destruction, finally moves. She pushes herself out of the small armchair, Her movements are stiff-old. She stumbles forward, her hands outstretched. "Simone," she whispers, her voice raw. "Simone." She doesn't stop at the coffee table. She walks right up to me, her eyes streaming with tears, and she does something I never thought I would see. Brenda Vance, the proud, cold matriarch of the Vance family, collapses. She falls to her knees at my feet. The thud of her knees hitting the hardwood floor is sickening. She grabs my hands. Her skin is cold and clammy. "Simone, please. She sobs, using the Vietnamese word for child that she only ever used with Marcus. It's a desperate, manipulative ploy, and it makes my stomach turn. "Please," she begs, her face crumpled. You can't. You can't take everything. They are family. He was your husband's father, his brother." "It's my fault," she cries, her head bowed. "It's all my fault. I was weak. I've always been weak. I should have said something. I heard them. I heard them talking about the vendor accounts. I knew it was wrong, but Jeremiah, he was so forceful. And Dante, he's my firstborn." She's confessing. Not to the police, but to me. Confessing her silence. Confessing her complicity. "I should have protected you, Simone." She weeps, her tears falling onto my hands. "I know I should have. I never stood up for you when they were cruel. I let it happen. I let it happen this morning. I am so sorry. I am so, so sorry." She looks up at me, her face a ruin of makeup and tears. "But please, don't do this. Don't destroy them. Don't take the company. It's all Jeremiah has. It's his life. It will kill him. It will literally kill him. And Dante, he's just weak. He followed his father. He's not evil. He's just weak. Please, Simone, have mercy. For Marcus. Marcus wouldn't want this." I look down at the woman kneeling at my feet, the mother who abandoned her son's grieving widow, the woman who sat drinking tea while they tried to throw me onto the street, and as I look at her, I wait for the feeling. I wait for the surge of triumph, the payoff, the feeling of victory. But it doesn't come. I feel nothing. Just a vast, hollow, echoing exhaustion. I am not a vengeful god. I am not a queen. I am just a widow in a house full of thieves. Looking at her, I don't feel powerful. I just feel tired. I am so, so tired. Tired of their greed. Tired of their weakness. Tired of their lies. Tired of their performances. Tired of Brenda, who even in her confession is still making excuses for the men who did this. She isn't sorry for me. She's terrified of the consequences. This isn't an apology. It's a negotiation. And I am done negotiating. I pull my hands gently from her grasp. I pull my hands from Brenda's grasp. My voice is flat, devoid of all the emotion that was choking me just an hour ago. "Get up, Brenda." She looks up at me, her face a mess of tears and confusion. "What? Get off your knees," I say again, my voice sharper this time. "Don't you ever—" I lean down slightly, "ever kneel to me. You are my husband's mother. The time for begging is over. The time for performances is over. Get up." She's so stunned by my coldness that she obeys, scrambling back to her chair in the corner, pulling her handkerchief to her face, her sobs now quiet, terrified whimpers. I turn my attention to the three people who orchestrated this. Jeremiah, who is still slumped in his chair, Dante, who looks like a cornered animal, and Megan, who has pushed herself up from the floor, her face blotchy and red, her mask of sophistication completely gone. "You're right, Brenda," I say to the room. "Marcus wouldn't have wanted this. He wouldn't have wanted his family to be defined by this kind of ugliness. He was a good man, a better man than any of you." I walk to the center of the room. But I'm not Marcus, and I'm not the sentimental, rustic little girl from Decatur you all thought I was. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a forensic accountant. And I'm the one he trusted, so I'm not going to make a decision based on emotion. I look at Jeremiah. I'm going to make one based on logic. I am going to give you a choice, a simple professional choice, the kind of choice you never ever gave to me. You have two options, and I suggest you listen very, very carefully, because your entire futures depend on what I say next. I hold up one finger. Option 1. I pick up my phone. I call Aaliyah Rice, who is waiting just outside that door. She will then call her very good friend at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. His name is Andre Stallworth. He's the head of the white-collar crime division, and he hates prominent Atlanta families who think they're above the law. I watch their faces. Jeremiah's jaw clenches. Megan's eyes widen. I will hand him everything, I continue. And when I say everything, I mean everything. I will give him the complete, unredacted file on Megan's shell company, Southern Pine Lumber, including the articles of incorporation filed under her maiden name. I will give him the 18 months of fake inflated invoices that Dante, as president of Southern Operations, reviewed and approved. I will give him the digital records of every single wire transfer that I, as head of risk management, also approved, showing a clear, undeniable pattern of money flowing from Vance Innovations directly to your fraudulent account. That, by the way, is wire fraud. It's a federal offense. They love those at the federal level. Megan makes a small, choked sound. I will give them the audio recording, I say, tapping my phone, of this entire conversation, including Megan's very loud, very detailed confession that she set it all up to protect her husband. And I'll include Dante's admission that he knew about the vendor, and Jeremiah's attempts to cover it up and bribe me into silence. And Brenda, I'll even include your confession that you knew about it and stayed silent. Obstruction of justice, I think they call it. I will give them the notarized quitclaim deed you tried to ignore this morning, and Aaliyah will provide the sworn testimony from the 2 private security guards who witnessed you trespassing, attempting to steal my property, and threatening me in my own home. The district attorney will convene a grand jury. You, I point to Jeremiah. You, I point to Dante. And you, I point to Megan, will all be indicted. Not just for embezzlement, not just for corporate fraud. You will be indicted for racketeering. RICO charges, given that this was an ongoing criminal enterprise involving multiple family members. You will lose everything. Your reputations, what's left of them, will be gone. The Vance name which you love so much, Jeremiah, will be dragged through the mud and associated with common thievery for the rest of your lives. You will be bankrupted by legal fees before you are convicted, and I will see you convicted. You will go to prison, real prison, not the country club minimum security facility you're imagining. We're talking about state prison, Reedsville, Jackson, places that don't care about your family name. I let the image settle in the room. That, I say, is option 1. I let the reality of option 1 settle over them. I let them sit in the terror of what a future in a Reedsville prison cell would look like. I watched Jeremiah, a man who built his entire identity on his name and his reputation. Imagine what it would feel like to have that name dragged through the Atlanta media as a common thief. I watched Megan, the ambitious lawyer, calculate the years she would lose her career and her life turning to dust. They were broken. After a long, agonizing silence, I spoke again. I said, my voice cutting through the stillness. There's option 2. I walked over to Aaliyah's briefcase, which she had deliberately left on the console table. I opened it and pulled out a second folder. This one was thin, simple. It contained only 3 pages and a pen. I walked to the coffee table and placed the folder gently in the center between them and me. I slid it across the glass. The sound was soft, but it made all of them flinch. Jeremiah stared at the folder as if it were a bomb. Megan, her hands shaking, was the one who slowly reached for it. Her legal instincts, however faint, were still twitching. She opened it, her breath hitched. A stock surrender and full release agreement. She read, her voice a reedy whisper. It's exactly what it sounds like, I said. You sign it, all 3 of you. I looked at Jeremiah. You, Jeremiah, will sign over your entire 49% stake in Vance Innovations to me, effective immediately. All voting rights, all shares, all claims. Gone. I turned to Dante. You, Dante, will sign over your non-voting shares, your title, your salary. Everything. Gone. I looked at Megan. And you, Megan, will sign as a co-conspirator and party to this agreement. You will release all future claims against me, my company, or my husband's estate. And you will legally acknowledge your role in the misappropriation of funds, a confession that will remain private if you comply. You will all, I continued addressing the three of them, sign full resignations from the board and any executive positions effective immediately. You will agree to a permanent ironclad non-disclosure and non-compete agreement. You will never ever associate yourselves with the Vance Innovations name again. I paused, letting the terms sink in. You will walk away from the company. Forever. Dante, who had been pale and silent, finally spoke. And in return, he stammered, looking at me with the eyes of a terrified child. In return, I said. In return, I do nothing. Jeremiah looked up confused. What? What do you mean you do nothing? I mean the audit. I said the one Marcus mandated in his will is suddenly complete. I, as the final approver, will sign off on it. I'll state that all financial discrepancies have been reconciled internally. The file on my server, I continued, the one with every fake invoice, every wire transfer, every piece of evidence, gets permanently deleted. The audio recording of this entire delightful conversation gets erased. Aaliyah Rice never makes that call to the district attorney. The story ends. Right here. In this room. Today. Jeremiah looked up from the document, his eyes hollow. He looked around the room at the life Marcus had built at the company he had just lost. You take everything, he whispered. The words were a wisp of his former roar. My company. My life's work. My legacy. I felt a cold, sad smile touch my lips. Your legacy, Jeremiah. You already destroyed your legacy when you started stealing from your own son. You lost your integrity. You lost your honor. You lost your family. You don't have a legacy left to take. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city Marcus loved. I'm not taking anything from you, I said, my back to them. I'm taking back what you stole. I'm saving the company that my husband and I built while you three tried to bleed it dry. I'm taking back the legacy he created, not you. I turned around to face them one last time. What I'm giving you is a gift you don't deserve. I'm giving you your freedom. I'm giving you your name untarnished by a federal indictment. I'm giving you the ability to walk down the street at the Capital City Club without people pointing at you as the man who stole from his son's widow. I'm taking back what you stole. In exchange, you get to keep what little honor you have left, and you get to stay out of prison. I pointed to the pen on the table. That's the deal, and it's the only one you're going to get. You have 60 seconds to sign. Or I call Aaliyah. The pen sits on the glass table between us. 60 seconds of silence stretches into an eternity. I can hear Jeremiah's ragged breathing. I can see the vein pulsing in Dante's temple. I can see Megan's mind racing, trying to find a loophole, a counteroffer, a way out. There isn't one. With a groan that seems to come from the very depths of his soul, Jeremiah lurches forward. His hand, shaking with a palsy of rage and defeat, grabs the pen. He doesn't read the document. He just signs his name, a spidery, angry scrawl that tears at the paper. He shoves the folder toward his son. Dante picks up the pen. He looks at his father, then at his wife, then at me. His eyes are dead. He signs. Megan signs last. Her signature, usually a confident flowing script, is tight and cramped. A lawyer signing away her own life. I reach forward and pull the folder back. I review the signatures. They are all there. It's done. Good, I say, closing the folder. I stand up. Aaliyah will file these in the morning. So, Dante says, his voice hollow. It's over. Oh no, I say, looking at him. The signing is over. The consequences are just beginning. We haven't discussed the liquidation of assets. Jeremiah, who was slumped in his chair, looks up. Liquidation. You said you wouldn't prosecute. You said you would reconcile the audit. And I will, I say. I will not press criminal charges. That was the deal. But Vance Innovations, the company you just signed over to me, is still technically bankrupt. It owes my other company, MI Vance Holdings, $12 million. As the new CEO, I have a fiduciary duty to pay my creditors, and as the creditor, I have a right to collect. Megan's head snaps up. You're going to liquidate the company anyway. I am, I say. I am absorbing all of its assets into MI Vance Holdings to settle the debt, and that includes the executive properties. What executive properties? Dante whispers, but he already knows. Your house, Dante. The beautiful 5-bedroom home in Ansley Park. It was bought with a company-backed loan. It's an asset of Vance Innovations, and I am seizing it. No! Megan shrieks, lunging forward. You can't! Our children! And your house too, Jeremiah, I say, cutting her off, my voice cold. The 30-acre Buckhead estate. The one your father left you. You leveraged it against the company 10 years ago to cover your gambling debts. Marcus had to bail you out. The company, my company, now holds the deed. Jeremiah makes a choking sound. You're taking both our homes, Dante says, his voice breaking. I am taking back what you stole with, I reply. But I am not your husband, Brenda. I turn to my mother-in-law, who is still huddled in the corner. You, I say, can stay. She looks up, her eyes wide with shock. What? This house, I say, gesturing around the room, was transferred to me directly. It is not a company asset. It is mine, and I am giving it to you. You can live here unbothered for the rest of your life. Brenda starts to sob, a sound of profound relief. On one condition, I add. Her sobbing stops. You will live here on the $5,000 a month stipend Marcus left you. But you are never, ever allowed to let Jeremiah or Dante live with you. If I find out they have spent a single night under this roof, the house and the stipend revert to me. Do you understand? Brenda nods frantically, tears streaming down her face. Megan, who has been watching this, finally cracks. But where will we live? She wails. Dante, Jeremiah. We have nothing. Where are we supposed to go? I look at her, the woman who just hours ago was admiring my vase, who called my home rustic, who told me to go back to my ghetto. I walk to the front door and hold it open. The security guards are still standing on the porch. I don't know, Megan, I say, my voice flat. But I hear Decatur has some very affordable rentals. My security team will escort you to your properties to retrieve your personal belongings. You have 24 hours to vacate. After that, I will be changing the locks. Now, get out of my house. 24 hours. That's how long I gave them. 24 hours of agonizing silence. 24 hours for them to sit in the ruins of their lives and weigh the two options I had given them: public humiliation and federal prison, or private ruin and freedom. They chose freedom. They signed the papers. Jeremiah's hand shook so badly he could barely form his name. Dante wept silently, his shoulders shaking. Megan, the lawyer, just looked dead inside her signature, a tight, angry scrawl. They signed it all away. Their shares, their homes, their power, their future. And now I was standing in the main conference room of Vance Innovations. My conference room. It was packed. Aaliyah had worked fast. In the last day, she had not only finalized the transfer of assets, she had also called this press conference. The room was hot from the camera lights. Reporters from the Atlanta Business Chronicle, the Journal-Constitution, and a half-dozen local news affiliates were crammed into the space microphones, extended notebooks open. They smelled blood in the water. The Atlanta Black elite loves a good story, and the sudden death of a visionary like Marcus Vance was major news. They had all come expecting a tearful widow to announce the company was being sold, or that the old guard Jeremiah was taking over. They were about to be very, very surprised. Aaliyah stood to my left, a silent, crimson-suited pillar of strength. I stood at the podium, the one Jeremiah used to pound his fist on. I looked out at the sea of faces. My heart was hammering, but not from fear, from power. This was the first step. This was where the new narrative began. I tapped the microphone. The small sound silenced the room. "Good morning," I said, my voice clear and steady. It didn't tremble. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice." I looked down at my prepared notes, then pushed them aside. This had to come from the heart. We are all here today because of a profound and sudden tragedy, the passing of my husband, Marcus Vance. I let his name hang in the air, a sign of respect. Marcus was more than the CEO of this company. He was its visionary, he was its heart, and he was my partner in every sense of the word. His loss is immeasurable, not just to me, but to the city of Atlanta, which he loved and was working so hard to reshape. A few reporters nodded, scribbling. There has been a great deal of speculation in the last 48 hours about the future of Vance Innovations. Who will lead? What will happen to its projects? What the line of succession will be? I stood up straight, my hands resting lightly on the podium. Today I am here to end that speculation and announce a major change in leadership. I looked directly into the main camera, the one broadcasting this live. I thought of Jeremiah, Dante, and Megan, wherever they were, probably huddled around a TV watching this. This part was for them. Following the ratification of my husband's final will and the execution of a pre-planned corporate restructuring. I let that hang in the air. Restructuring. A beautiful, clean corporate word for a hostile takeover. I, Simone Vance, as the co-founder and now sole owner of this company, will be assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. The room exploded, not with applause, with the frantic clicking of cameras and a barrage of shouted questions. "Mrs. Vance, sole owner. What about Jeremiah Vance? What about Dante?" I held up my hand, and miraculously, they quieted. I was the one with the power now. "I know this may come as a surprise to some," I continued, my voice cutting through their excitement. "But my husband was a man of great foresight. He and I built this company together from the ground up, and his estate plan was designed to ensure its stability and seamless transition. My role as co-founder has until now been focused on brand strategy and financial risk management. But as of today, I am taking full operational control." A hand shot up in the front row. It was Maria Diaz from the Atlanta Business Chronicle. She didn't wait to be called on. "Mrs. Vance," she called out, her voice cutting through the clicking of cameras. "Forgive me, but this is a significant development. The long-standing succession plan, as we all understood it, was that in the event of Marcus's passing, his father Jeremiah and his brother Dante would assume control of operations. Can you comment on their new roles within this leadership structure?" The room went dead silent. This was it. This was the real question, the elephant in the room. They didn't care about my grief. They cared about the power struggle. They cared about the bloodline. I looked at Maria. I let the silence stretch. I wanted them all to lean in. I wanted them to remember this exact moment. I thought of Jeremiah standing on my porch just yesterday, his face purple with rage, screaming, "I am the legacy." I thought of Dante patting my cheek, telling me to go back to Decatur. I thought of Megan, her eyes sparkling with malice as she claimed my vase. I smiled, a small, polite, professional smile. "Thank you for that question, Maria," I said. "I'm glad you brought it up. I know there has been a lot of speculation, and I am happy to clarify the new corporate structure for everyone." I gripped the sides of the podium lightly. As of 9 a.m. this morning, both Jeremiah Vance and Dante Vance have officially retired. If I had thrown a brick, the reaction could not have been more explosive. A collective audible gasp filled the room. Reporters who were typing stopped their fingers hovering over their keyboards. "What?" someone shouted from the back. "Retired. Both of them." I held up my hand, and the room incredibly fell silent again. They were hanging on my every word. "That's correct," I said, my voice smooth and practiced. After much consideration following this family tragedy, they both decided it was time to step down from their executive duties to pursue personal interests. Personal interests, I thought, like avoiding federal prison, a much better hobby than corporate fraud. Another reporter, a man from the local television affiliate, was already on his feet. "But Mrs. Vance, their shares, Jeremiah Vance held 49% of this company himself. Combined with Marcus's shares, the Vance family held the entire company. What happens to their stake?" This was the second barrel of the shotgun. I looked at him. A valid question. As part of their retirement agreement, both Jeremiah and Dante Vance have also relinquished all shares, all stock options, and all financial interest in Vance Innovations, effective immediately. This time there was no gasp. There was just stunned, profound, disbelieving silence. The reporters looked at each other. Relinquished, as in, gave up for free millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars in shares. No one could process it. It didn't make business sense. They didn't relinquish them. I thought they traded them. They traded them for their freedom. They traded them for their honor. They traded them for the right to not spend their golden years in a state penitentiary. A deal that I, in my grief, was generous enough to offer. I looked back at the cameras, my face a mask of calm, compassionate leadership. "It was a difficult time for everyone," I said, my voice softening just enough. "They felt, and I agreed, that this was the best path forward for the company. It allows for a clean break, a unified vision, and a fresh start, which is what Marcus would have wanted." I smiled again. It was an amicable decision, and we all wish them the very, very best in their future endeavors. The room is still reeling from the news of the retirement. They're processing what it means. A company this size doesn't just lose its chairman and its president on the same day without a story. And I'm going to give them one. But it will be my story. The true story. I lean forward into the microphones. My voice is steady, but now it carries the weight of a CEO, not just a widow. Marcus and I founded Vance Innovations on two core principles: innovation and integrity. We believed in building beautiful, sustainable spaces, but we also believed in doing it the right way, ethically, transparently. I let this sink in. I am setting the stage. I am reminding them of who Marcus was, of what we built. Which is why, I continue, this transition is so critical, because in the last 18 months, as my husband and I prepared for this company's next phase of growth, we discovered serious financial irregularities. That's the word. Irregularities. Aaliyah and I had practiced this. It's a beautiful, sharp, legally precise word. It's not an emotional accusation. It's a cold, hard fact. A murmur goes through the room. Reporters are leaning forward, their pens flying. "These irregularities," I say, my voice full of resolve, "were not minor accounting errors. They were a systematic pattern of mismanagement originating from the old management." I look directly at the main camera, knowing Jeremiah and Dante are watching. I am not accusing them. I am just stating a fact. They are the old management. This mismanagement by Jeremiah and Dante Vance, I say using their full names for the legal record, was severe. It was reckless. And it was hidden. I let the room absorb the shock of me naming them directly. I don't need to give details, I think to myself. I don't need to mention Southern Pine Lumber or Megan's maiden name. In this world, in the world of high-stakes corporate business, financial irregularities is a death sentence. It's a clean, professional way of saying they are thieves. It's enough to destroy their reputations forever without me ever having to look vindictive. I am not just a grieving widow. I am a CEO reporting a finding. I take a deep breath and deliver the final necessary truth. These irregularities, which we were in the process of investigating at the time of my husband's death, had left Vance Innovations in a deeply precarious position. In fact, they had pushed this company, my husband's legacy, to the very brink of bankruptcy. The room erupts, shouts of bankruptcy, and what irregularities fly from the reporters. This is a much bigger story than a simple family succession. This is a scandal. I hold up my hand again. The room once again falls silent. They are waiting for the other shoe to drop. The situation was dire, I say, correcting my tense. But I am not here today to dwell on the past. I am here to talk about the future. I take a deep breath. This is the final move. As the new CEO, I say, my voice ringing with absolute confidence. My first official act has been to address this financial crisis head-on. As of 8 a.m. this morning, I initiated a full-scale debt restructuring of Vance Innovations. This is news to them. They're scribbling frantically. The $12 million in consulting fees. I let the words hang, a final subtle dig at my family, that were paid out to my private holdings company, MI. Vance Holdings have been reinvested. MI Vance Holdings, I explain, has officially bought the outstanding corporate debt, consolidating it under one single stable entity, myself. I lean forward, my eyes finding the main camera. In simple terms, for those of you who aren't forensic accountants, I have personally, with my own assets, recapitalized this company. I have cleared its toxic debts. I have saved it from the bankruptcy that the old management had guaranteed. Vance Innovations, I declare, my voice ringing with finality, is no longer in debt. It is not precarious. It is not failing. As of today, this company is financially stable, solvent, and poised for a new era of growth under new leadership. My leadership. I have just told the entire Atlanta business community that Jeremiah and Dante almost destroyed one of the city's flagship Black-owned businesses, and that I, the artsy wife they tried to throw out, just saved it. All without ever raising my voice. I let the room absorb that. The reporters are scribbling, their faces a mix of shock and excitement. They have their story. Jeremiah Vance's widow saves company. But I'm not finished. I'm not just here to save the company's finances. I am here to save its soul. I lean forward again. My husband, Marcus Vance, was a visionary. He loved this city. He loved our community. He believed in building beautiful, sustainable things. But more than that, he believed in building people. I look around the room, making eye contact. His father, Jeremiah, often spoke about legacy. He spoke about the Vance name and the bloodline. But Marcus and I always believed that a true legacy is not what you keep for your family. It's what you build for your community. Jeremiah and Dante's actions were driven by greed. They tried to turn this company, my husband's life's work, into their own personal bank account. They almost destroyed it all in the name of a legacy of greed. I pause, letting the indictment hang in the air. That ends today. To honor the true legacy of my husband, Marcus Duvernay Vance, a legacy of integrity, not greed, I am proud to announce the formation of the Marcus Vance Innovation Fund. This gets their attention. This isn't just a corporate restructuring anymore. This is not a small gesture. I continue, my voice ringing with passion. This is a permanent, binding new mission for our company. The Marcus Vance Innovation Fund will provide full 4-year scholarships for young, gifted Black architects, engineers, and designers attending our nation's historically Black colleges and universities. I smile, thinking of my own alma mater. Students from Spelman, Morehouse, Howard, Hampton. They will have the resources to build the future. And this is not a one-time donation. Starting this quarter, I am legally committing 10% of all net profits from Vance Duvernay Innovations in perpetuity to this fund. His name will not be associated with theft. His name will be associated with opportunity. The room is silent. Then a single camera flash goes off. Then another. And another. It explodes. A sea of flashing lights, the sound like 100 shutters clicking at once. The reporters are on their feet. I stand there calm in the center of the storm. I just told the entire city of Atlanta that the Vance family legacy is over. And the Marcus and Simone Vance legacy has just begun. They came for a funeral. They came for a corporate scandal. They came to see a widow weep. Instead, I just gave them a resurrection. I didn't just save my house. I didn't just save my company. I saved my husband's name. I have changed the entire narrative. And this is the real payoff. This is the only revenge that matters. My voice was still echoing in that conference room when the first alerts hit the reporters' phones. Before I had even finished my glass of water, the story was live. The Atlanta Business Chronicle ran the headline an hour later. Vance Innovations Shakeup. Widow ousts father-in-law alleges gross mismanagement. The news spread through the Atlanta black elite faster than a wildfire. You see, in our world, in the world of old money Buckhead and the established black families, there are two things that matter: wealth and the appearance of wealth. Reputation is not just important, it is everything. And I had just detonated an atomic bomb in the middle of their cocktail hour. By that evening, the story was the only topic of conversation at the Capital City Club, at the 191 Club, at every exclusive gathering I had ever been excluded from. Jeremiah and Dante Vance, the widow's coup. They had not just lost a company, they had lost their place. They had lost the company. They had lost their multi-million-dollar homes. They had lost the ability to walk into a room and command respect. Jeremiah and Dante, the supposed titans of Atlanta, were now just the men who had been exposed for stealing from their son's widow. They had lost the one thing they truly worshipped: their social standing. But the swiftest, most predictable fallout, the first rat to jump from the sinking ship, that came from Megan. Megan, my sharp, ambitious white sister-in-law, had hitched her wagon to the Vance name. She had endured Dante's weakness and Jeremiah's arrogance because it gave her access. It gave her the Ansley Park house, the designer wardrobe, the ability to look down on rustic girls from Decatur like me. It took her exactly 48 hours. Aaliyah called me 2 days after the press conference. I was at home in my home, finally trying to process the overwhelming silence. "You won't believe this," Aaliyah said, and I could hear the laughter in her voice. "What?" I asked. "Megan Vance just filed for divorce from Dante. Irreconcilable differences." I wasn't surprised. I actually laughed, a short, dry sound. "She can't stand a broke man, can she?" "Apparently not," Aaliyah said. "She signed her name to a document that helped steal millions, and the second the money dries up, she's the first one out the door. Her loyalty is thinner than her microbladed eyebrows." But Megan was not just going to slink away. She was a lawyer, and she was greedy. A week later, Aaliyah called me again. This time, she was not laughing. "This woman has some nerve, I'll give her that," Aaliyah said, her voice tight with anger. "What now?" I asked, a headache already forming. "She's suing you." I actually dropped the phone. I fumbled to pick it up. "She's suing me for what?" "Intentional infliction of emotional distress." I was speechless. She's suing me for emotional distress. She helped steal $12 million. She watched them try to throw me out of my house. She broke my Moroccan vase, and I distressed her. She's claiming," Aaliyah said, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she read from the legal filing, "that your calculated and malicious corporate takeover and public shaming campaign caused her severe mental anguish, loss of consortium, and damage to her personal and professional reputation. She's trying to get a payout," I said, my blood boiling. "She thinks she can scare me into a settlement. She thinks I won't want the Southern Pine details made public." "Oh, I know," Aaliyah said, and her voice turned cold. "And I've already handled it. I just got off the phone with her attorney, a C-list shark from Marietta." "What did you say?" I told him his client had two options. One, She could proceed with this frivolous, insulting lawsuit, at which point I would countersue for conspiracy to commit wire fraud. And then, just for fun, I would release the entire Southern Pine Lumber file, including the articles of incorporation under her maiden name, the faked invoices, and the bank statements showing the deposits into her private account, to the Atlanta Business Chronicle, the DA, and the Georgia Bar Association. I guaranteed him she wouldn't just be disbarred, she'd be sharing a cell with her husband. And what was option 2? I asked. She drops the suit, immediately, and she never ever says your name, Marcus's name, or the Vance name in public or private again, for the rest of her life. And he called me back 20 minutes later. Aaliyah said, the smile back in her voice. The lawsuit has been withdrawn. That was the last I ever heard of Megan Vance. She did not just withdraw the lawsuit, she vanished. She packed her beige clothes and her mirrored furniture, and she disappeared from Atlanta. The rumor I heard from Aaliyah's sources was that she'd moved back to Savannah to live with her parents, disbarred, divorced, and disgraced. The woman who had tried to build an empire on my husband's name was now a social pariah, a footnote in the scandal she had helped create. She couldn't stand a broke Dante, and as it turned out, the world couldn't stand a broke her. With Megan gone, Dante was left completely exposed. He was a man-child who had never had to function in the real world. Marcus had given him a fake job to protect him, and Megan had enabled his greed to fund her lifestyle. Now both of them were gone, and he had no one left to hide behind. He tried, of course. He tried to get a job at other real estate firms in Atlanta, but the scandal had made his name toxic. No one would hire the man who had been publicly ousted by his sister-in-law for financial irregularities. The Atlanta elite is a small insular world, and the story of Jeremiah and Dante Vance had become a cautionary tale whispered at every charity gala and golf tournament. He lost the Ansley Park house, of course. The bank seized it. I heard through Aaliyah that he and Megan had been living so far beyond their means, so confident in their fraudulent income stream that they were leveraged to the hilt. They had nothing. With no job, no wife, and no home, Dante had only one place to go. He had to move in with his mother. He had to move back into my house. The house I now owned, the house I had graciously gifted to Brenda. The irony was so thick I could barely stand it. He, the man who had called me Decatur trash and told me to go back to my ghetto, was now living in my old guest room under my roof by my permission. He was a 38-year-old man living on his mother's $5,000 a month stipend, the stipend that I now controlled. Brenda called me once about a month after he moved in. She was hesitant. Simone, she'd said, Dante was wondering if perhaps you could increase the stipend, just a little. He's having a hard time adjusting. Adjusting to what? I'd asked, my voice cold. Well, he's looking for work. It's difficult. He has needs. No, I said. But Simone. No, Brenda. $5,000 a month is more than enough for you to live on. Dante can get a job. I hear Starbucks is hiring. I hung up. The last I heard from one of Aaliyah's contacts, Dante was working as a salesman at a used car dealership. Not at a sleek Mercedes or BMW lot in Buckhead, at a buy here, pay here lot on the south side near South DeKalb, the very area he used to mock. But Jeremiah's fall was different. It wasn't just financial. It was existential. Dante was weak, but Jeremiah was proud. His entire identity, his entire sense of self was built on being Jeremiah Vance, the patriarch, the chairman, the man who controlled everything, and in one morning I had taken it all away. He lost the company he believed was his. He lost the Buckhead estate his father had left him. But most of all, he lost the respect and fear he had commanded his entire life. He didn't just retire, he vanished. He refused to move in with Brenda and Dante. His pride wouldn't allow him to live in a house that I owned under my rules. He took what little was left in his personal accounts and moved into a small rented condo somewhere in Sandy Springs. He became a recluse. The man who once dominated every room he entered now refused to leave his own. He stopped answering his phone. He stopped seeing his friends. Brenda would call me weeping. This was the only time I ever heard from her. She never called to ask how I was doing, how I was grieving her son. She only called to report on the status of her broken husband. "He won't eat, Simone," she'd cry into the phone. He just sits in the dark. He hasn't shaved in weeks. He just sits in his armchair staring at the wall." "What do you want me to do, Brenda?" I'd ask, my patience worn thin. This was his choice. He keeps muttering," she'd sob. "The same thing, over and over. He mutters, 'The bloodline, the bloodline. She broke the bloodline.'" "I'm sorry to hear that, Brenda," I'd say. "He needs therapy." "He won't go. He says there's nothing left. He says you took his legacy." I remember hanging up the phone after that call. I walked onto the balcony of my new penthouse looking out over the Atlanta skyline. His legacy, I thought. He was so obsessed with his bloodline that he couldn't see the son he actually had. He was so obsessed with legacy that he couldn't see the empire Marcus was building. He was so obsessed with me not being blood that he drove his son to build a fortress to protect me from him. He hadn't lost his legacy. He was his legacy. A legacy of greed, pride, and ruin. He didn't just lose his company. He lost his son long before that aneurysm ever took him. And he lost the respect of the one person who had tried against all odds to be his daughter. He wasn't sitting in that dark room because I had exposed him. He was sitting there because for the first time in his life, he had no one left to blame but himself. He wasn't just ruined, he was finally truly alone. I didn't feel the triumph I expected. There was no surge of satisfaction as I watched from a distance their lives unravel. I thought I would feel vindicated. I thought I would feel a sense of righteous, burning justice. But as the news trickled in over the next few weeks, I just felt empty, hollow. Aaliyah kept me informed. Megan had vanished, pulling her proverbial tail between her legs, her legal career in Atlanta finished before it ever truly began. Dante, without his wife's ambition or his father's power, was just a shell. He was a 38-year-old man living in my old house, the one I had graciously left to his mother, subsisting on a stipend that I, his sister-in-law, controlled. The irony was bitter, but it gave me no pleasure. And Jeremiah. His fall was the hardest, the most complete. He didn't just lose his company and his homes, he lost his name. In the tight-knit world of Atlanta's black elite, reputation is the final currency, and his was now worthless. Brenda's tearful phone calls, which I eventually stopped taking, painted a pathetic picture, a broken old man sitting in the dark, muttering about his stolen legacy. I didn't feel a thing. Their downfall wasn't a victory. It was a tragedy. It was a terrible, profound, and utterly unnecessary waste. They had everything. They had a family, a name that did mean something, a successful company that Marcus had single-handedly transformed into an empire. They had health. They had wealth. They had a son and a brother who was brilliant, kind, and unfailingly generous. A son who, despite everything, still loved them. They had it all, and it wasn't enough. Their greed was a bottomless pit. It was a sickness, a rot that had set in long before I ever came into their lives. They were so busy protecting their legacy that they became the very thing that destroyed it. They were so obsessed with what they believed was theirs by right that they couldn't see the gift they already possessed, and their obsession with blood. That was the real poison. That was the true generational curse Jeremiah was so proud of. The Vance bloodline. It was a phantom, this idea of blood. A justification for their cruelty, their exclusivity, their arrogance. It was the wall they built to keep the world out and to keep people like me in my place. They couldn't see my value, not just as a person, but as a partner to Marcus, because I didn't share their name from birth. I wasn't from the right family, I was just the girl from Decatur. They couldn't respect me. And that was the ultimate tragedy, the one that made my heart ache in a way their downfall never could. In the end, they couldn't even respect Marcus. They didn't respect his choice. They didn't respect his partner. They didn't respect the boundaries he tried to set. They didn't respect his vision for the company, a vision based on integrity, not just profit. They couldn't respect him because he didn't conform. He didn't follow their old-world patriarchal rules. He didn't just marry a quiet, submissive, acceptable woman from their social circle. He married me. He married a partner, an equal, a woman with her own mind, her own skills, her own strength. And to them, that was the ultimate betrayal of his bloodline. They were so obsessed with their blood, they were willing to bleed their own company, their own son dry. Marcus saw it all. He saw the sickness in them. He knew them. He knew what they were. And now, standing in the quiet of my new life, I finally understood the full scope of what he did 18 months ago. His plan, the will, the house deed, the corporate restructuring. It wasn't just a defense. It wasn't just a contingency. It was an act of liberation. He knew he couldn't cure them. He knew he couldn't change them. He knew he couldn't fight them emotionally while he was alive. It would have broken his mother's heart and torn the family apart in a way he wasn't willing to do. So he did the only thing he could. He built a cage, a legal ironclad cage for them, and he gave me the key. He wasn't just protecting my assets. He was freeing me. He was giving me the tools, the legal and financial power to break free from the toxicity he had been trapped in his entire life. He knew they would come for me. He knew they would try to erase me, to reduce me to a weeping, penniless widow. So he left me a sword. He left me a shield. He armed me for the war he knew was coming. He gave me the power to not just survive them, but to dismantle the entire corrupt, broken system they had built. He gave me the power, the choice to end this generational curse of greed and control and narcissistic pride. He didn't just save me. He set me free. 2 weeks later, after the final corporate papers were signed and Vance Duvernay Innovations was officially and solely mine, I finally went to Westview Cemetery. I went alone. It was a bright, cool morning. The city skyline was sharp against the blue sky. I stood in front of the new polished black marble headstone. Marcus Duvernay Vance, beloved husband, visionary, architect of the future. The wind was cold. It pulled at the single white rose I was holding. I placed it gently on the stone, my fingers tracing the letters of his name. "It's done," I whispered to the cold marble. "I did it, love. I know you never wanted this. I know you never wanted to fight them. You just wanted peace. You just wanted to build beautiful things." A tear I hadn't expected, hot and sudden, rolled down my cheek. They didn't give me a choice. They came for me, just like you knew they would. They tried to take the house. They tried to take the company. They tried to tell me I wasn't blood. I took a deep, shaky breath, wiping the tear from my face. "So I did what you taught me to do. I used the tools you gave me. I used my brain. I was strategic. And I was strong. It's all cleaned up now, Marcus. The mess is gone. Dante and Jeremiah, they're gone. The company is safe. It's ours, the way it was always supposed to be." I stood there for a long time in the quiet of the cemetery. The anger I had felt in that house was gone. The coldness was gone. There was still the grief. That would always be there, a part of me, a shadow that lived alongside the light. But for the first time, there was also peace. "I protected our legacy," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Not theirs, ours, the real one, the one we built together." "Rest now, my love, rest. I've got it from here." 6 months, 183 days since I stood in this very room and announced the end of one legacy and the beginning of another. 6 months since the world of Jeremiah and Dante Vance shattered into 1,000 pieces. 6 months since I truly, finally buried my husband. Today, Vance Innovations is no longer just Vance Innovations. I filed the papers the day after the press conference. It is now officially Vance Duvernay Innovations. Duvernay. My name. The name my father gave me. The name I was proud of long before I ever met Marcus, and the name he was proud of for me. It is on the letterhead. It is etched in the glass of the front doors. It is a daily, permanent reminder that this company is no longer just a bloodline. It is a partnership. Even in his death, Marcus and I are partners. The company is thriving. It turns out when you stop $12 million from being siphoned out of the operating budget every 18 months, you suddenly have a lot of capital to work with. The first thing I did as CEO was clean house. Not just Jeremiah and Dante. I terminated every sycophant, every yes man. Jeremiah had hired every executive who had collected a paycheck for doing nothing but agreeing with him. I replaced them with talent, with innovators, with people who, like me, were hungry and had something to prove. My second act as CEO was to call an emergency board meeting, which was easy because the board was now just me. My third act was to create a new board. Aaliyah Rice now sits at my right hand not just as my lawyer, but as the chairperson of the board of Vance Duvernay Innovations. Her legal mind is a steel trap and her loyalty is absolute. I also brought in a retired executive from Coca-Cola, a sharp older black woman named Lorraine, who knows this city better than anyone. I brought in a young disruptive tech CEO from Georgia Tech's incubator program. We have a board built on merit, not on name. There is no dead weight. There are no illusions. We hold our meetings with the books wide open. I am sitting in my office. Or I should say I am sitting in Jeremiah's old office. The room itself is a metaphor for the changes I've made. When I first walked in here as CEO the day after the press conference, it was suffocating. The room was a shrine to Jeremiah's ego. The walls were covered in dark, heavy mahogany paneling. The curtains were thick burgundy velvet that seemed to drink the light, leaving the room in a perpetual state of twilight. His desk was the size of a small car, a massive, imposing block of wood designed to intimidate anyone who sat opposite it. And the smell. It smelled of old cigars, expensive whiskey, and something else. Something like dust and arrogance. I had the entire thing gutted. I called a design build team one of our own, one of Marcus's favorites, and I told them one thing: I want to see the sky. Today that office is unrecognizable. The heavy mahogany walls are gone, replaced on two sides by floor-to-ceiling glass. The Atlanta skyline floods the room, the sunlight is almost blinding. I can see from Buckhead all the way to downtown. The heavy velvet curtains are gone, replaced by clean, automated shades. Jeremiah's monstrous desk was the first thing to go. I donated it to a church auction. My desk is a sleek, white oak surface that floats in the middle of the room. It's a place for collaboration, not intimidation. The leather-bound books of great men of business that lined his shelves are gone. My shelves are filled with books on sustainable architecture, modern art, and behavioral economics. The air is different. It smells of fresh paint, new ideas, and the lemon and gardenia scent from the candle on my desk. This is not his office anymore. This is my command center. But the most important change, the one that makes me smile every single morning when I walk in, is the wall behind my desk. That wall used to be Jeremiah's altar to himself. He had a massive oil-painted portrait of himself hanging there. It was one of those terrible hyper-realistic paintings where he was posed like a 19th-century railroad baron, staring down at anyone who entered. It was designed to make you feel small. The painting is gone. I sent it to Brenda's house. I told her she could hang it in the garage. In its place is a new piece of art. It's a massive canvas, 10 feet wide, an explosion of color. It's an abstract piece full of movement and life, with deep blues, fiery oranges, and brilliant golds. It's powerful. It's defiant. It's beautiful. It's not a Picasso. It's not a Basquiat. It's a piece I commissioned from the very first recipient of the Marcus Vance Innovation Fund, a 21-year-old senior at Spelman College named Kayla Thomas. I found her work at a student art show. She had this incredible talent but no resources. She was painting on stretched bed sheets because she couldn't afford canvas. Our fund gave her the scholarship to finish her degree. It gave her a stipend for materials. And I gave her her first professional commission. I paid her the full market value, a check that made her cry. Now her art hangs where Jeremiah's ego used to be. It is the first thing I see every morning when I sit down at my desk. It is the last thing I see when I leave at night. It is a constant reminder of why I did this, why I fought. Jeremiah wanted a legacy of blood. He wanted to build walls. I am building a legacy of talent. I am building bridges, and I am just getting started. I sold the house. The big, beautiful $3 million house in Buckhead. I sold it almost immediately. Aaliyah had it on the market within a week of the press conference. It sold in a private off-market deal to a tech executive who fell in love with the design. My rustic design. I couldn't stay there. Not anymore. It wasn't Jeremiah's house, but it was haunted. It was haunted by Marcus, yes, but in a way that I cherished. His laughter was in the walls, his presence was in the garden, but it was also haunted by them. I couldn't walk into the kitchen without seeing Brenda sipping her tea, her face a mask of cold indifference. I couldn't stand in the living room without seeing Jeremiah's face purple with rage, telling me to pack my bags. I couldn't look at the foyer floor without seeing the shattered pieces of my Moroccan vase. The house wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a battlefield. It was a crime scene. It was the place where my heart had been broken twice, first by death, then by betrayal. The memories were too much, the good and the bad. They were all tangled up together, and I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I couldn't separate the joy of Marcus from the trauma of his family. So I sold it. I sold the award-winning design. I sold the Eames chair. I sold the heart pine console table. I sold the whole performance of a perfect life that had been a lie. I took my art, I took my clothes, I took my books, and I took the $3 million from Marcus's life insurance. And I left. I didn't just move across town. I left Atlanta. The city was my home, but it was also their home. I didn't want to run into Dante at a used car lot or see Brenda at the grocery store. I needed clean air. I needed a new start. I bought a farm. It sounds crazy, I know. A 34-year-old widow, a forensic accountant and graphic designer buying a farm. But it wasn't a farm. It was a small 20-acre property about an hour outside the city in Serenbe. It was a place known for its focus on art, nature, and community. It had an old white 2-story farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a big red barn that I was already planning to convert into a design studio. It was the opposite of the Buckhead mansion. The Buckhead house was cold marble and glass, a house built to impress. This house was warm wood and soft light. It was a house built to live. It was the first place I had been able to breathe properly since Marcus died. I could sit on my porch and watch the fog roll in over the fields. I could have a garden. I could walk on my own land. It was quiet. It was safe. It was mine. From here I could run the company. I could run the foundation. I could run my life. I still have to deal with Brenda. Our relationship is complicated. That's the polite word. She still lives in the Buckhead house, my old house. I am technically her landlady. And she still calls me. She calls me once a week, usually on Sunday afternoons. She never called me when Marcus was alive, but now she calls. It's not to apologize, not really. She's apologized for being weak. She's apologized for not being stronger, but she's never not once apologized for her choice. She's never admitted that her silence, her sitting there sipping tea while they tried to destroy me was an action, a betrayal. No, she calls to report. She calls to tell me that Jeremiah is still not eating. She calls to tell me that Dante's car was repossessed. She calls to tell me that the family name is in tatters, and what are people saying, Simone? She talks to me as if I'm some distant relative, a confidant, the one person who understands the scale of the tragedy. She seems to have forgotten, or maybe just conveniently erased the fact that I was the one who caused it, that I was the one who held them accountable. I listen mostly. I keep the calls short. "That's a shame, Brenda," I'll say. "I hope he feels better soon." "I'm sorry to hear that, Brenda, but I have a meeting I have to get to." I keep my voice polite. I keep it distant. I still send the $5,000 stipend every month just like Marcus wanted, and I still own the house she lives in. I am her provider now. I am the head of the family she so desperately wanted. The irony is bitter. She is terrified of me. She's terrified I'll stop the payments. She's terrified I'll sell the house out from under her just as they tried to do to me. She's terrified I'll tell Dante to get out. So she calls. She performs her penance. She plays the part of the grieving mother-in-law, hoping I'll continue to be merciful. And I am. I am merciful. I don't stop the payments. I don't sell the house. I let Dante live in my old guest room, a failed prince in a castle I own. But I don't forget. I don't forget her sitting in that kitchen. I don't forget her cold eyes. I don't forget her turning her back on me when I begged her for help. I am not a cruel woman. I am not Jeremiah. I will not throw an old woman out onto the street. But I am not a fool either. I will never let her get close enough to hurt me again. She is family. But she is not, and will never be my friend. She is a reminder. A very expensive, very tragic reminder of what happens when you choose silence, when you choose weakness, when you betray the people who love you. Our weekly calls are her real punishment. Not the loss of the money, but the monthly polite cold reminder of the woman she failed and the woman who now holds her entire world in her hands. It's today, the day it all becomes real. It's been 6 months since the press conference. 6 months of rebuilding, restructuring, and redirecting the flow of the river I inherited. I am standing backstage, not in my office, not in my new home, but at Spelman College, my alma mater, the place that made me. The air in the Sisters' Chapel is thick with history and anticipation. It's the first ever award ceremony for the Marcus Vance Innovation Fund. Aaliyah is in the front row looking incredible in a royal blue dress. She catches my eye from the wings and gives me a subtle, sharp nod. Her way of saying, "You've got this." In the front row, right below the stage, sit 10 students. 10 of the brightest, most talented, and most overlooked young Black minds from all over the country. Architects from Howard, engineers from Tuskegee, designers from Spelman and Morehouse. Their faces are bright, nervous, and so full of potential it almost makes my chest ache. I'm holding a stack of plaques, my hands steady. The Dean of Arts finishes her introduction. And now it is my profound honor to introduce the woman who made this all possible. A visionary in her own right, a graduate of this very institution, and the new CEO of Vance Duvernay Innovations. Please welcome, Simone Duvernay Vance. I walk out onto the stage. The applause is warm, genuine. It's not the frantic flashing of cameras from the press conference. It's the sound of a community. I step up to the podium. I look out at the crowd, at Aaliyah, at the 10 students who are the future. "Good morning," I say. My voice doesn't shake. When my husband Marcus Vance and I first sketched out the idea for our company on a diner napkin, we had a vision. We weren't just a construction firm and a design studio. We were a partnership, and we wanted to build things that mattered. There is a lot of talk, especially here in Atlanta, about legacy, about family name, about bloodlines. I let those words hang in the air. I can feel the weight of Jeremiah's entire philosophy in that single word, bloodline. For so many, I continue, legacy is a fortress. It's something to be hoarded. It's about protecting what's yours from the outside world. It's about building walls. It's about who you exclude, not who you include. It's a legacy of less, a legacy of mine. My husband, he rejected that. Marcus believed that a true legacy is not something you lock away in a vault. It is not something you pass down only to those who share your name. Marcus believed that a true legacy is not what you leave for your family, but what you build in your community. I look at the 10 students. Their eyes are fixed on me. He and I believed that our company's vision wasn't just about building innovative buildings. It was about building opportunities. It was about opening doors that had been systemically shut. It was about ensuring that the next generation of innovators, of architects, of designers, of visionaries, had the resources to build a future we can only dream of. The old guard of this city, I say, my voice filling with the passion I had kept locked away for so long, is comfortable with the way things are. They are comfortable with a legacy of greed, a legacy of exclusion, a legacy of us versus them. Marcus Vance was not a comfortable man. He was a disruptor. He was a builder. So today we honor his true legacy, not with a cold stone building, but with a living, breathing promise. The promise of the Marcus Vance Innovation Fund. Jeremiah and Dante Vance, the former managers of this company, were driven by a different set of values. They almost destroyed this company in the name of greed. Today we consecrate it in the name of integrity. I am so proud to announce that starting this year and in perpetuity, 10% of all net profits from Vance Duvernay Innovations will be dedicated to this fund, not as a one-time donation, as a permanent part of our corporate charter. The old legacy of Vance Innovations was taking. The new legacy is giving. I look down at the 10 students. To our first 10 scholars in this front row, you are not just recipients of a scholarship. You are the first generation of Vance Duvernay innovators. You are the legacy. You are the opportunity. You are the future that Marcus and I always believed in. Go out and build beautiful things. The chapel explodes in applause. The students are on their feet. Aaliyah is on her feet, tears streaming down her face, and she's not even trying to hide them. This is it. This is the moment. This is the final true payoff. Jeremiah and Dante tried to steal a company. I've just turned it into a powerhouse for change. They wanted to hoard a legacy for their bloodline. I've just given it away to an entire community. This is the only revenge that matters. Not destruction, creation. I am not just a widow. I am not just a CEO. I am finally the architect of my own life. The applause was a wave of warmth that washed over me. I stood at the podium, my hands still holding the edges, my knuckles white. For a moment, the chapel was completely silent, as if the entire audience was holding its breath. Then it started. It wasn't the polite, obligatory clapping of a business meeting. It was a surge. It was loud, and it was genuine. The 10 students in the front row, the first ever recipients of the Marcus Vance Innovation Fund, were on their feet. Their faces were a beautiful mix of gratitude, shock, and fierce determination. Soon, the entire auditorium was standing. I looked to the front row to my left. Aaliyah was on her feet. My rock, my lawyer, my best friend. She wasn't just clapping. She was cheering, her hands cupped around her mouth. Tears were streaming down her face, and she wasn't even trying to hide them. I looked back at the students. This was it. This was the legacy. Not the cold, hard name of Vance etched on a building, but this feeling, this connection, this shared hope. This was what Marcus and I had always talked about late at night, sketching on napkins, dreaming of a future bigger than just the two of us. I stepped down from the podium, my hands still shaking, and moved to award the plaques. I shook each student's hand, looking every one of them in the eye. A young woman named Kayla, the one whose massive, brilliant painting now hung in my office, pulled me into a quick, fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means. You have no idea what you mean to us." "Yes," I whispered back, my own voice catching. "I think I do." After the ceremony, the stage was flooded. It was a chaotic, beautiful sea of congratulations. Aaliyah was there first, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like her expensive perfume and absolute loyalty. The dean of Spelman College shook my hand warmly. Old professors who remembered me from my forensic accounting days came up to marvel, patting my shoulder. I was surrounded. I was smiling, shaking hands, accepting praise, but also feeling that familiar drain that comes from being the center of a large crowd. After about 20 minutes, the crowd began to thin. People started moving toward the reception in the courtyard. I was talking to Aaliyah, discussing dinner plans when I saw him. He hadn't been part of the crush of people on stage. He was standing near a tall, arched window, patiently observing, waiting. He was tall, maybe in his mid-40s. He wore a tweed jacket that looked comfortable and lived in, not calculated and expensive, like the suits the Vance men wore. He had kind, intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses and a short, neat beard. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't trying to command the room with his presence. He just was. When he saw me look his way, he didn't rush over. He simply offered a small, respectful nod and began to walk over, weaving his way through the last of the well-wishers. He stopped a polite distance from me. Aaliyah, sensing a new energy, took a small protective step closer to me. "Mrs. Vance," he asked, his voice a smooth, calm baritone. It was a voice used to teaching, to explaining. He didn't push, didn't shove his hand out, he just waited. "Yes," I said. "That was an incredible speech," he said, and his smile was genuine. It wasn't the sharp, predatory smile of the business world I had gotten used to. It was warm. One of the most authentic and moving I've heard in a very long time. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "But it wasn't just the speech," he continued, and his gaze was so direct, so intelligent, it was almost startling. "It was the fund, the structure of it, what you're doing, redirecting corporate profit directly into community-facing education, tying your company's success to the success of these students. That's not just charity. Well, it's revolutionary. It's systemic change." I was impressed. Deeply. He hadn't just heard the emotion in my speech. He had understood the mechanism. He had understood the work. He saw the forensic strategic mind behind the donation. "I'm glad it resonated," I said, my professional demeanor clicking into place. He finally extended his hand. "I'm Elias Thorne," he said. "Dr. Elias Thorne. I'm a visiting professor at Georgia Tech, Urban Planning and Sustainable Communities." "Simone Vance," I said, taking his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and brief. It was respectful. "I know." He smiled and his eyes crinkled at the corners. "Your press conference 6 months ago. It made waves. Not just in the business sections but in the urban planning community as well. What you did, taking over that company, the allegations of financial irregularities, the bloodline versus integrity narrative, it was magnificent." I felt a flush of surprise. "Thank you, doctor. I was just protecting my husband's legacy." "You were redefining it," he corrected gently. "And that's actually why I'm here. I almost didn't come. I didn't want to intrude on a personal day. But what you said in your speech about building opportunities, not just buildings, it's the core of my own work." He hesitated just for a moment, as if suddenly nervous. "This might be too forward, but I'm heading a new project in the Sweet Auburn district, a mixed-income sustainable housing initiative. We're trying to build, as you said, ethically and transparently. We have the city's support, we have the community's support, but we're looking for a corporate partner who actually understands that vision. Someone who isn't just looking for tax breaks and good PR." He took a breath. "I was wondering, would you be willing to meet for coffee sometime next week? I'd love to pick your brain, and maybe, just maybe, discuss a potential partnership." I looked at his outstretched hand, then down at my own. I saw the flash of gold on my left ring finger. My wedding ring. The simple platinum band Marcus had slid on my finger 12 years ago. The symbol of my love for him, a love that was still the anchor of my life. For 6 months, that ring had felt like a shield. It was my armor protecting me from a world I wasn't ready to face. A world that was now suddenly full of men who saw me as a wealthy single CEO. A world I wasn't sure I was ready for. And for a second the old grieving Simone the widow wanted to recoil, to say no, to retreat back to the safety of my farmhouse, my company, my memories. "I'm not ready," a small terrified voice whispered. "It's too soon." But then I looked up at Dr. Thorne's face again. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He wasn't looking at me with the flattering, hungry look of a suitor. He was looking at me like a colleague, an equal, a person whose brain he wanted to pick. He wasn't asking me on a date. He was offering me work. He was offering me not a new romance, but exactly what I had just been talking about on that stage: an opportunity, a chance to build, a chance to continue the real legacy. And I thought of Jeremiah. His entire world was built on bloodlines, on what you inherit, on who your father was. My world. The world Marcus and I started, the world I was now building alone. It was about integrity. It was about what you do. It was about the actions you take, the lives you touch, the legacy you build with your own 2 hands, brick by painful brick. The grief for Marcus was still there. It would never leave. It was a part of me now, woven into my DNA, as much a part of me as my own name. But it was no longer the only part of me. It didn't define me. I was not just a widow, I was a CEO. I was a philanthropist. I was a forensic accountant. I was a survivor. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready for coffee. I smiled. A real smile. Not the cold, victorious one I gave Jeremiah. Not the polite, professional one I gave the reporters. A genuine, warm, unguarded smile. "I'd be happy to, doctor," I said. My voice was my own. "And please, call me Imani." The biggest lesson from Simone's story is to never ever underestimate the person everyone dismisses. Her in-laws saw her as just an artsy wife, a rustic girl from Decatur they could easily push aside. They had no idea she was a forensic accountant who held the real power in their company. While they plotted to steal her home, her husband Marcus had already armed her with legal traps to protect her. They were so obsessed with bloodline, they forgot that true legacy is built on integrity and strategy, not just inheritance. Always protect yourself. If you have ever been underestimated, share this story to remind them that the quietest person in the room often holds the most power.